Okay, everyone, welcome back. Tonight, I'm going to do something a little off my norm. I've conned one of my colleagues, the illustrious Casey, into coming in and working with me. For those who were hanging around on the stream last week, when we were doing source generators, he had dropped in because he's also working on a source generator himself. So, volunteered or voluntold to get him to come on, show it off a little bit, and then we can work through it and actually work on it and I guess sort of see what quote unquote real problems look like or not made up problems. So rather than watching me struggle, you get to watch both of us struggle at the same time. Couple things I was going to plug really quick before I let Casey have fun at this. So Casey, you can say hi now.
Hi.
The company I work for, Intelitech, they did a lunch and learn on YouTube earlier on PowerShell. It is likely to be the first of several in a series. So if you are interested in that, there is the recording there. There should be, I don't know if they actually posted up more stuff. Hang on. Can.net user group. So if you are interested in seeing and potentially joining them live, this meetup is how the events typically will get scheduled. You can feel free to join that. So that is up and available. So Casey has this Devise source generator that we're going to work on. But just to kind of set the frame of where this is coming from, Intelitech also has I'll call it a framework. It's kind of both a library and a framework called Coalesce that is designed to basically make building out 3-tier web applications significantly easier. So you write, and this is actually a little out of date. This is much newer than this. Picture latest and greatest. Apparently we need to update our website. You write EF models and you turn Coalesce loose on it, and it will take those EF models, go crazy, and generate out both your middle business tier, your controllers, views, using either view or knockout, generate out a whole bunch of kind of default pages for direct CRUD operations so that you can see it. You can check out a demo of kind of the stuff that it can generate out here of just taking a look at, okay, what is the person table? You get a bunch of helpful table layouts for editing. Yes, this is live. Yes, you can just edit the data. I think at some sort of timer it goes and clears stuff out or something because things will go crazy every so often if you let people just put arbitrary data in. And if you are, yes, very dangerous. And if you're interested in learning more, I conned the authors of it to do a stream with me May of 2 years ago, since I can read dates. So if you're interested, more stuff there. But Devise, so Coalesce is not a source generator. It's we'll call it a CLI app that does all the generation. And Casey has this idea to do source generator stuff very similar to it. So Casey, what is Devise?
Honestly, a lot of the inspiration for it came from taking a C# web class. In fact, one that you were teaching.
That's scary.
I hadn't done yeah, I know, right? I hadn't done a lot with ASP.NET or really any web functionality through C#. So when I got in there, we were going through the basic CRUD functionality, building out controllers, DTOs, auto mapping, all that good stuff. And my brain instantly thought, I wonder if I can automate this. And then I saw at that point it was fairly new, source generators from C# 9. And I was like, hey, I wonder if I can do this with that. So started on the project about 9 months ago or so.
I can click on the history and we can tell exactly when you pushed.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was about 10 months ago, actually. And then I kind of drifted away from it, got busy with some other stuff, work and just other side projects. I have way too many interests, as I'm sure you kind of do too.
I never stay up
But
late coding.
no, never, never. And you don't have a 3D printer, and you don't 3D print stuff. None of that, right? No, of
Definitely
course
not.
not.
I would never waste
No.
hours and hours with it.
Far too much time. But recently, decided I wanted to jump back on, start working on it again. Kind of got inspired by watching some of your stream, and then just seeing some coding videos on YouTube. I was like, hey, you know what? I need to take another crack at this. Start working on it again. Maybe make some more progress. So here we are.
Cool.
And then yeah, as the about says there, the idea is much the same as Coalesce, be a basic CRUD API generator. Right now, I've only got Dto Generation and AutoMapper profile generation going. I made the decision to swap over from interpolated strings for my generation to a templating engine called Cottle. Pretty
Ooh.
neat little templating engine you can find on GitHub. Pretty fast too.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know this one.
oh, you don't?
No.
Oh yeah, take a gander
I
at
was gonna
Cottle.
say. I was gonna say. Wait. Hang on. I will find. You pulled it in. This guy. So if I go
Yeah.
NuGet and I go, because I know you exist, and I go here, and like all good open source projects, they link back to their repo. Ooh. Well, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's got a nice little syntax language there that it uses for interpolating when it does the templating, or the rendering of the template, which is pretty cool. So started to implement that, got that built into my DTO generation, and for the most part got it built into my mapping profile generation. So yeah.
Wow, that's actually ridiculously good. Sorry, just pulling up some of their benchmarks
Right?
of, because I've used Scribian before. I've obviously used Razor a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at Fluid at one point, but I had not seen Cottle. Sweet. I'm real quick. We're just gonna give them a star, and then I will be coming back to that at a later point.
Good.
Cool.
Always want to share, good open source projects that people can use on their own stuff. So
I'm always happy to learn more stuff. Okay,
Oh,
so
I thought you hated it.
okay, so I'm gonna switch over and share your screen because I think we're gonna let you drive, and then I'm gonna do some fancy stuff on the fly that does not at all look like screen manipulation. Let me just do that. Do something like that. Nobody panic at the size yet. Something like that. Because unfortunately, as might be obvious. Let's see, and then boom.
Bob's your uncle.
Something akin to that. Something akin to that. And I hope. Sorry, I'm just gonna double check how that looks.
No
really
problem.
Quick, because I think that looks readable, but I just want to make sure that it's not just me. And then
Looks good through the stream on my side.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll roll with it. Okay, so
Awesome.
You've got point. Where are we going?
All right. Well, I mean, I'll just give you kind of a quick run through here. So, somewhat different from the generator you were working on last week. What I'm actually doing is, and this is somewhat of a naive approach to start out with. I have the basic layout of a 4-project web application here. So we've got a project for data, project for web, project for business, and a project for the API. I'm at this
I will
point
warn you, your Solution Explorer is kind of tiny, but keep going.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I can't really make that much bigger, but
No, without grabbing an extension, but carry on.
yeah.
You're doing great.
So basic for project website. Um, so it does assume that these all end with .api, .business, .data, .web. And unlike your generator, what I'm actually doing is I'm pulling the actual project source files from the data project, which is where my entities live, and then using that to generate in the API in the business project. So I'm unable to use the syntax context readers or a syntax receiver rather,
Right,
due
because
to
you're
it
not
being in a different assembly.
right. Because at this point, your quote unquote source generator isn't technically, it's generating source, but its input isn't other source. Its input is dependent DLLs.
Oh, actually, no. I'm actually using the source, so
Oh,
that might bring me to a whole nother realm of ways you can inform me of better things to do.
well,
Um,
better's debatable.
Better's
Because
debatable. Okay,
well, because so okay, so walk
walk you
me
through it.
through this. Yeah. So
Okay. So first pass of the generator does run against the data project,
yeah.
and it will actually generate out my two attributes that are currently what I'm using to find my entities and then determine information about the entities that I want to bring into the generation. So um, these two are here. The Devise attribute, which just marks the entity for as a Devise target. Um,
All
Pretty
right.
simple.
So this is
Honestly, these are unnecessary at this time, but I've put them in because I plan to use them in the future. But
okay. Can you scroll up to that? The code for it. Okay. And this was a question I had had for you in the past as well. Is
mm-hmm.
does this need to be source generated in, or should this just be a NuGet dependency or similar that pulls in this
They
code?
reference.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because this doesn't necessarily add a lot to it. You also kind of have some weird APIs where some of those things are read only versus read write properties, but
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and that's again one of the many things that this is somewhat of a naive approach. Not a lot of familiarity with attributes, or rather, designing my own attributes.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
but yeah, so
you got all the important
that's
stuff, I would say, in there. Sealed
okay.
class, you've got attribute usage decorated on top. Your name ends with attribute, which is more convention enforcement. Um, it looks good, I guess, in my opinion.
Cool. And then the other attribute that's being generated is this, and I'll pull down to here so the nice syntax highlighting to read from.
Ah,
And this is the one that actually does or will do the magic. So it allows for defining which of the targets you're referencing,
hmm,
the valid targets being API, business, DTO, or mapping, the four items that I plan to have generated through this. And then for API or business, you can mark if you want to have a custom create, read, update, delete list, basic CRUD functionality. If you want to write your own rather than have Devise write it out for you or generate it for you, you can do
hmm.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
pretty basic there.
one thing that's worth noting on attributes is a lot of
Mhm.
times what you will do is having the constructor like this is perfectly fine, but often you will create the properties as read write. Simply
Okay.
because when you declare the attribute, it then gives people a little bit of freedom in which of the attribute syntaxes they want to use when assigning to each of those properties. I assume
Okay.
that's part of the reason for the capitals on the parameters, because normally
Yeah.
it would be for Pascal case on the parameters rather
hmm
than camel case. But normal,
hmm
and I assume you're doing that for named parameters to make them show up nicer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I was
and
gonna say normally you do read write properties and then go with normal casing on the attribute would be the more common approach. but
Let me bump up my size here for you. Boom. There we go. We'll jump over to here where we've got an example. Yeah, so example of the usage there.
sorry, what do you think you're sharing?
Oh, that's right.
Did you do a window
I'm
share?
sharing.
I was gonna
I did
say
a window share
you
instead of
said
a
bounce
screen
over
share.
and nothing bounced, and I was a little confused.
Yeah, give me one moment to fix that. Sorry about that.
Minor details.
Change windows? No, can I? Share screen.
Stream has ended. Cricket noises. Oh no, this stream isn't over. Just Casey's screen share.
Go.
No one panic. I'm panicked.
Go live. There we go. Now we can see a little bit better.
Hey, look at that.
Oh, and you actually couldn't see this before when I was referencing the four.
Yeah, well, your point. It was over your Solution Explorer on the other one, so it was
perfect
it,
sizing.
Yeah, it happened to line up, so that was fine, I guess.
Just a little confusing, yeah. So, but basic setup, or rather, basic example of the way it would be used, and you can expand out from there if you want to do mapping. Is this not gonna? I don't think it's gonna syntax highlight. Oh, duh. Never mind. That's a target list. There we go. So mark, create, and list for custom create or custom implementation in the API. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So that's the basics there.
The basics. And at this point, it's not. So beyond the attributes, what else is being generated? Anything at this point, or not a lot?
At this point, I have two other things that are being generated. So once we get the attributes generated, in the first pass through, it does pass through on each of my other projects. Business is currently not generating anything, but we are generating on API. And API first starts by loading the data project. So I've got a fairly basic little loader for the files.
So this is how you're getting the. Okay, I see what you're doing.
Yep, and then I'm running it through my own little.
So you're doing a second pass just to get at the syntax tree. Interesting. Okay.
So I get all the files from, or rather all the text from the syntax tree, break down the entities to those that I care about, those with the Devise attribute on them, and then just return those entities back to the source generator, or rather the source generator. First is the Dto generation. So we've got that here. Nice little simple rendering of the template here using cottle.
I'm going to pretend like I didn't see that fully qualified path.
Yeah, no. Again, it's not perfect right now. Honestly, that's something that needed to be fixed at some point in the near future, but I had not gotten to it yet. But this was the original intended implementation type here, was to break it down, give it the name of which of the templates you're looking for. It goes through, gets the template, and then returns it. But I have not gotten that functional at this point.
Okay.
So that's something we could do.
Cool.
But
that's interesting. When you say template, that's the cottle templates, right?
Yeah, so that's these bad boys right here. Pretty simple, and I don't know why that's not popping open for me. Very strange.
Is it opening a tab on a different screen or similar?
No, this is the only one I got. Did my Visual Studio freeze? Can I open anything else? Yeah, everything else opens. Quite strange.
It's
I don't know why that's not open.
Hit open with on that when you right click and try Let's see. You should be able to do like source editor or similar.
Source code.
Yeah. That is very interesting that it wouldn't be popping a tab.
Give me 1 second. I'll just pull it up on VS Code.
That's another option.
And anybody who's watching can tell I do not stream often or ever. I am not nearly as ready as my good friend Kevin here is.
You haven't watched enough of my streams. You seem to think I'm usually prepared and ready.
More prepared than I, at least. So yeah, so these are what and let me Control plus. There we go.
There we
Get
are.
some size up in there. So pretty basic.
1 second, real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to just real quick do a copy, paste, duplicate. Oh, I got 2 of you now. Sorry, I decided that I wanted to bring
my face.
Your face. I mean, what's the point of having your pretty face if I can't see it?
Aw, how nice.
So, but I need to do a little region cropping for this. And then whoop, and then nope. I need to learn how to crop. You're gonna look ugly for a minute.
Normal state of being.
And then
now I'm real big.
Now I got you in somewhat normal-ish looking.
They look a little blurry, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, you got to understand what I'm working with for my inputs. You're bigger than actual size, so
it's just fine, just fine. So yeah, so these are what the cottle templates look like. Allows for some string interpolation there, based on the I believe they call them cottle contexts that you render with against the template. So I take and actually that's wrong. Always finding bugs, you know. Bring in the namespace. This should actually be, that should actually just be base namespace, which it adds the DTO to. Entity name, adding DTO to the end, pretty standard. Looping over the entity properties for the property and the type, bring that down if the type is or ends with a question mark is nullable. Mark it with the nullable decorator, I think.
Yeah,
that's what that's called, right?
I don't remember what the pound nullable is, though. I am curious why you would want to turn on nullable at the property level versus turning it on because because typically you use the pound nullable to turn nullable reference types on for a given range in your code. Usually you set it once at the top of a file to say like nullable reference types are on, and typically you do that because source generators nullable is set to, it's not off, it's nullable ambiguous, or what, because there's 3 states of being an object can be in: is nullable reference types on, nullable reference types off, and I don't know,
might be on. Yeah. Honestly, no specific reason other than at the time that I did it, I was trying to resolve an issue here. There we go. And that's going to be tiny, of course. There's no way to increase that, is there? Nope. annotation for the nullable reference types should only be used in code with
Nullable
a
code.
pound nullable annotation. Auto-generated code requires an explicit notation.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense on why you would see that come up, though you would generally do it, like I said, at the root. And
class level.
Yeah, because the other thing is you would only ever end up specifying that for, like, if you had a class that had all non-nullable properties, you would end up never setting that. And that would actually be wrong. You'd still want the pound nullable. Specifically, you'd actually want pound nullable space enable, because there's a parameter that gets passed to pound nullable to turn it on and off.
Okay,
but in this case, you're only going to turn it on if you see, and it's either enable or enabled. I might have to look at my nose plug library. Does it? I might go poke at what I generate there, but I just hard coded it to always be on.
It's enable, I believe, based on the syntax, or rather the
oh yeah, the
good old
autocomplete on
suggestions.
Yep. So that would. But what you may want to do is look at, rather than looking at the type name to determine nullability, you should be able to look at your syntax tree and know whether nullability is turned on for a given class, and go from there. Because with this source generator, you're sort of making the assumption that nobody's going to mix and match this, right? The expectation is if you have this turned on for your data project, you're using Devise to generate your stuff. You're not necessarily going to say, well, I'm going to pull from one project here and not somewhere else. And I think having a simple rule that says, hey, you can't like mix and match nullable reference types halfway through your entities. It'd be a little weird for somebody to do that to begin with.
Is it unheard of though?
It's pretty rare. The only time I've ever seen somebody do that is like on a migration story where they're bringing old code forward. But I would suspect that given that your thing exists now post nullable reference types, somebody's either going to always have it on or always have it off, and probably not a lot of, like, I imagine you're not going to run into a situation where there's too much mix and match in the middle.
Okay, so then, long story short, this is unnecessary, but this should be added at the top of the class.
I would propose you do like pound nullable, and then you send through a, what do you call it, the cottle property or context value. Send through, have your code pass through either enable or disabled for what the state of that should be. Because when it pulls up the syntax tree for the entity, I believe there is, and it might be, the property might even be called nullable on syntax node. Maybe.
Let's see here. Actually, I'd have to pull it from. Do class declaration? Yeah, class declarations have.
Yeah, check.
Well, any of the syntaxes have their parents.
Yeah, right? So just look at the class declaration syntax. So just do like class declarations.single dot. Right? Because that will. Oh, and actually, you've already got a bug that we ran into last time. Haha, we'll come to that in a second. Search nullable on that. Nothing. What is it on? Okay, I look. Roslyn. There is. There is. You might have to do the thing I struggled with before, where I was fighting with it last week with the get type info. The type info apparently has a nullability property on it.
But you get the type info from the semantic model, correct?
Mm-hmm.
which, because this isn't the project
Uh-huh.
that I'm running the generator against, I don't have a semantic model. At least I don't know of a way to get one. Maybe there is. I could definitely be wrong, but and this kind of gets back to something that we were talking about before when I was questioning whether or not it was better to have each pass of this generation or each run of this generator on the subsequent projects use or pull the syntax tree in from the other project, or if I should do something in the data project's run of the generator to save that information off where I would have access to the semantic model and maybe able to get information easier or additional information like this, and then save it off somewhere and pull that into each of the subsequent projects runs of the generator.
And I think initially my comment was you aren't going to save, because I think we were discussing it in terms of performance, and I think my comment was you probably aren't going to save that much performance by doing that, which I think is probably still true enough, but you may run in. I'm thinking that from a functionality standpoint, it may be worth considering, given that you would get access to a lot more than what you have here.
Yeah. And of course, I'd have to figure out what I'd need from the semantic model there. Because the majority, I mean, from what I've seen, the majority of the information I could need, I can get from the basic syntax tree without the semantic model, but there are some contextual things like that I can't.
Right. And that may be worth doing, because then you could parse it once and be in a much happier state. Real quick, the bug that I was noticing, put your cursor on namespace declaration syntax down on line 107, F12 into that, and then look at its base class. So download source and continue debugging. This is kind of misleading since you aren't debugging.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second.
Oh, this is, oh, right, because you are not... Never mind. I was thinking of what I had run into before where file scope namespaces got their own node, and there was a common base time between file scoped and regular namespace. But I am getting the semantic model confused in again.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different beast.
It is, because you're coming at it from a slightly different side. Okay, so if we think that going down the option of perhaps persisting something in the data project, I'm wondering if there is I wonder how easy it is for a source generator to create an embedded resource.
That's a great question. I do not know.
So
it was something that I was considering. You know, I was building out a model here to save this information off. Right, to take it in that direction, but I had not gone any farther.
Because I think if you were to build it up, so an embedded resource has the convenience of anybody who ends up referencing the project or assembly, you don't have to worry about trying to like copy a second file around, which can be a bit of a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
However, there's the drawback of if you do that, that also gets to be a little bit more, well, copying I'll think out loud and you can tell me what you think. So if you embed it inside of the DLL, that gets easy, because then everywhere where the project or DLL gets referenced, it's automatically there because it's inside of the DLL.
And so I'd be adding that to the DLL at runtime?
At compile
of the generator?
Yeah. Well, at compile time. Yes. Embedding it in as an additional step there. The part that I don't know how easy that is to do, because typically the source generator's outputs are items that get added. Well, they get added into the compile set. Or added into the syntax tree. Real quick, can you do context dot? Right, beyond just add source, is there anything else?
Additional files?
Yeah, but that's an input. You'll note everything's immutable, so it'll have to be a add. something or another.
Just add source.
So that's mildly problematic.
Yep.
So, and maybe it's less useful then to try and figure out how to add it as an embedded, how to do it there and just work on pulling it out. So the other option is if you do it as a file, all your source generator needs to know is where to write that file to. And that's not terribly difficult because you can get the intermediate output directory, I believe is the MS build property. And what that basically stands for is at the time the compile's running, it's working inside of what is called your OBJ directory, right? So the MS build runs, it uses OBJ as basically its temp area to stage all the stuff, do all its work, and then everything goes into bin afterwards. But so intermediate output directory will get you the path into there, and you can pass properties into your source generator, which is the thing where I had stopped on last week. But if we operate under the assumption that we can get a path, we could add that file as a copy to output directory, right? No different than if it were, say, a text file in your project where you set copy if newer. We could do that as part of this. Now, and I say as part of this sort of loosey-goosey, because what would end up happening is you would need to do it as a post-build step, because the build would trigger, run your source generator, it would pass in a path for you to write to, and then it would add that path as a content with copy to output, and then copy the file out. So it would be making the sweeping assumption that I'm giving you a path, I'm going to assume there's going to be a file there, and if not, I copy nothing, but then it gets copied by magic.
Interesting.
And so you'd end up doing a little MS build work. Side plug, Spokane.net user group, next month's meetup will be my MS build talk on doing that kind of stuff. You can have a preview if you want. So say you can have a preview if you need it sooner.
Beautiful.
So that might be so. That would work, and the only time you get bit is if somebody ends up, because that would be referenced as a content file. As long as somebody did a project reference to the data project, it would then be ended up being copied around appropriately for you.
So at that point they would need
So as long as they do a project reference, and that's the kicker, if they do, which as long as long as they don't do something like put their data project in a separate repository or reference the DLL directly, which you shouldn't do.
Okay, yeah.
So as long as it's a project reference from business to data, which in that structure it should be.
Typically is, yeah.
There's very little reason somebody would separate it, but it is worth calling out that would be a limitation. If somebody were to reference that, they would either have to manually make sure that file was present, or they would have to have it be a project reference, in which case we could have MS Build do it for us.
Okay.
And you can get away, and if you package as a NuGet, there's some fun auto MS Build stuff that you can inject into to ensure that the right copy things that are there. So anything you do in your CS proj for Devise, when you ship as a NuGet, there's some fancy NuGet files that you can put in your own targets and post build steps and all kinds of fun things. So,
and that's a whole nother area of interest here for me, at least, is I need to figure out the proper, because I've never really worked with building out NuGet packages, obviously using them, but making sure that the references to the libraries that I'm using are there, which I have not been able to get to work correctly yet.
Yeah, so the reference to the libraries will be an interesting one for the source generator, because you're probably going to end up having to basically copy those in and probably do dependency resolution yourself.
Something similar to this stuff.
That is pretty close. Include runtime dependency, add NuGet DLLs, get pack files. This looks close, but I don't see where. So the one thing that's probably biting you is the package path is, I believe, wrong. So source generators don't go underneath lib. And that could be what's ending up biting you.
Okay.
Also, pro tip, NuGet Package Explorer. So there,
yes.
very worthwhile tool. Yeah, and I was gonna suggest you could do the online version, but I like the Windows Store local desktop-y version for testing things because it makes stuff like I use the web version when I'm looking at somebody else's package out on NuGet, and I use the desktop one for looking at my own stuff. So that would be another one is getting those things into the appropriate location.
Yeah.
And go from there. I don't know. So the hard part will be, first step will be getting those DLLs from that package path rather than it being lib net standard 2.0. Here, let me look real quick. I can tell you what those need to be. If I go and look at mine really quick. Oh, but mine doesn't get packaged quite the same as what you want. We might have to circle back to this because I don't think mine gets packaged up quite. Well, maybe it does. Okay, so I'm going to do something fun really quick, and I am going to see if I do. It works.
It's almost like I see your screen now.
Boom! It's almost like I know what I'm doing. So I just pulled up XAML test in the online version of it. Ooh. Straight off of NuGet. Huzzah. Nice. But if you look under analyzers, this is where when you run .NET Pack for a source generator, where your generator needs to end up. So the top level folder is analyzers, then .NET, and then typically you might have a language version. Don't quote me. I think if you don't put it underneath a language folder and just put it under .NET, it'll just work for all source generator supported languages, which really means C# and VB. At least right now, that's what it means. But you could do C#. I intentionally did mine as C# underneath C# simply for the idea of that way if somebody tries to reference it and use it inside of a VB project, NuGet gives them a warning saying, hey, by the way, this is a C# thing.
This isn't intended to be here.
Yeah, because if you try to generate C# into a VB project, well, not surprisingly, the VB compiler goes, I don't know what this is. So I think what you're looking to have yours do is land underneath analyzers.net CS rather than your libnet standard. Because anything under lib, what that will end up doing is when somebody references the NuGet package, the stuff under lib is what gets added as a dependency reference or a DLL reference to the DLL in there.
Oh, for the consuming project.
Correct. Which was my comment about, well, hey, should those attributes just be in an assembly? So like, and again, so the XAML test is actually not a horrible example of this because it does do both. Is I build out a library, but then I also have a source generator. It's optional to use it. You don't need it unless you want to do custom controls. But it lets you have both, so you can reference here, and away you go. So I think that's what you want to do in terms of NuGet package structure. And you can find the docs for the new spec for all of this, or you can do what I do, and I just find somebody else who's already done it, and then look at their structure.
I'm much more of a find somebody else who's already done it and then copy their structure, because some of that documentation can be pretty dense.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
And this is actually where my comment a second ago about how if you want to do some MS Buildy stuff with your NuGet package. So next magical folder is called build, has the same target framework directory structure as your lib underneath it. But then inside of it, if you have a .targets file that matches the ID of your NuGet package, it automatically gets added. If it doesn't, if the name doesn't match, you get no warning. It just doesn't get referenced. And then you're left scratching your head for hours going, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
But for example, I go through and add in extra outputs, do some stuff, do some copy stuff. So you'll note my comment about you might add something that runs after build that copies files. Hypothetically speaking,
that's
might
where
look
I find it.
something like this.
All right.
If you wanted a sample of it. So
Okay.
I don't know why I'm embedding the exe on this one. I don't know if I need to be. I should check that. It's not hurting anything, but I don't. Typically, you only need to do something like that if this guy needs to reference it directly. Oh, wait. star.exe, star.json. Ah, it is needed.
That might be why.
I know why it's used now. Because these are the ones that I end up copying to somebody's output directory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Got it. Because I just want my exe there, and away we go. Whoops, don't want to do that. So, just in terms of that, poof, look at that, your screen.
Beautiful.
Look at that.
So something more like this, or more akin to this, is what you're saying.
Something more akin to that. No, not there. I was thinking down. You don't have line numbers on your CS prods turned on. The item group that's down at the very bottom, where you have the package path attribute, that one. That's where I would anticipate you specifying, the analyzers all the way in. Analyzers.net CS.
Actually, these should probably be forward slashes.
They should be.
You know how I knew that? By looking at the other code.
And so that'll probably, so I can't promise that it's going to work, but that's going to get you a heck of a lot closer in terms of picking stuff up and adding things into your package. So
okay, cool.
That'll
the
the only other thing you may end up having to do at that point is so when the build runs, it loads your analyzer DLL or source generator DLL. That is running underneath the working directory that MS Build is in control of. And typically what happens for assembly resolution in C# is when some code references another assembly, the first place that it looks is right alongside the executing assembly.
Okay.
Or hang on, let me say that again. Right alongside the entry assembly, not your assembly. So the exe is going to be MS Build. MS Build loads your DLL. You're off over here. I don't know if it's smart enough for assembly resolution to jump over and look at yours. You might end up having to do something where you look up your assembly's current path and load the assembly manually by looking alongside of yourself. You might end up having to do that.
Okay.
And if you do, that would be a really cool use case for a modular initializer. Just saying.
So another talk in the future. Got it.
Got it. Yes. Well, short version, modular initializer gets to run before any code in your assembly does, which loading dependent DLL. So it's guaranteed to be executed exactly once and executed before anything else in your assembly runs, which sounds like a pretty good spot to do it.
That sounds almost tailor-made for this kind of problem.
Yeah, except for in some cases, like if you don't need to do that assembly loading every time, it might be wasteful, so that maybe not the right place, but for what it's worth. It could go either way.
It could go either way. Okay. Okay. Um. So yeah, let me
So, and I'm gonna, for
run you through.
anybody following along who wants to see the project, I'll just drop the link again.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, so I guess where would you want to go next? Like, because I've heard a couple things. We could look at like the embedding of the templates and pulling those out. I've heard we could look at maybe dealing with writing config file and reading that in. Like, what would be most useful to you? What's your burning heart's desire?
I mean, I like, well, two things. First, general structure. Just what do you think? Am I heading down the right path with a good portion of this? Is there anything glaring that you think should be kind of adjusted or changed? I mean, I know I haven't brought you through every file, but yeah,
no,
I mean, so far?
So far, I think it's pretty good. In terms of structure of the source generator project, it follows kind of the basic pattern that I outlined before, where source generators really should have two passes. The first pass being normally parse the source, or in this case, read the input. In your case, read the input is a little different than everyone else's, but sure, fine, whatever. You still have a read the input, and then a second pass that takes the data from that read input. Hopefully, the reading of the input generates some sort of domain-specific objects, and writes it out. And in your case, you've kind of mitigated a lot of code. Yeah, but you kind of have that in that your domain-specific bits are kind of the cottle config, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's
for the
to
most
some
part.
to some degree that is your domain models.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have the basic structure built, which seems very reasonable. I don't see any major issues there. There's really not like some of the code I would hit you with in code review, but
Beautiful.
But that
I'll probably have you do one of those sometime.
Yeah, but some of it I don't expect would make it that far, right? Like the file read all text with a hard-coded absolute path.
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to beat you up for in code review. However, it also screams this is debugging code that I was just testing with and is probably not going to make it to a pull request. Hypothetically speaking.
Probably,
I mean, it's
generally speaking.
work in progress. That's totally legit.
Okay.
I do like that you named your source files with a .g, .cs. That makes me happy.
Conventions.
Convention is good. I am noticing that you have two things that do context add source with the same name. Is that intentional? Mapping profile API.
Yeah. So this is the old, two old methods of generation. One that was based on the actual divisible entities, pulling that out, and then one that was based on some kind of weird thing that I was trying to do with some grouping and list and some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Little off there. So those are not currently being run, and will make their way to a nice little commented out section in the near future.
Add that to those things to beat you up for in code review.
Not production code.
Yeah, it's not shipped, therefore doesn't matter yet.
Exactly.
Though shipping is the most important feature of any project.
This is true. I'll get there someday.
I mean, there's only a few other things that I've noticed. Like I saw that if statement where you if data, if business, if API. I mean, I would like in code review, I would raise the question of, is it like you probably are not expecting all three of those if statements to return true for any given assembly name.
Correct. Switch it to a switch.
Either go to a switch or a minimum like an else if, because right now you're evaluating all of them.
All of them.
There is also the question of, do you expect that those are supposed to be suffixes rather than just contains? Like if I named if I put .business in the middle of mine, Would
for
that?
some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Well, the most likely use case I could see is I create a test project where I do .tests on the my API data tests, and I accidentally include the generator. Is
Okay,
that that bad? Like, should that be a suffix match?
Yeah, it should probably be a suffix match, though. That's another one of those things where, kind of like I was talking to you before, if I were to move away from using a config file like, well, let me pull up my other source here.
Oh, then it wouldn't matter nearly as much because the presence of the config would drive it rather than the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is driving that information, or some of that information. It's not driving that specific piece, but what I'd like to do is actually move away from using JSON for this and put that information inside of the CS proj.
Got it. That would make sense.
And if we get to that point, I can also just include information like this is the data project or this is the name of the data project.
Right. So one thing also to keep in mind is I noticed on that config file there was a relative file path indicating where it is. That can sometimes be problematic, specifically on pipelines, where the working directory when you do build in Visual Studio doesn't always match the working directory when somebody does .NET build on the command line. And
totally,
you're familiar with working directories and the pain and suffering that can cause. So one thing that's often worth doing is either having this thing have some concept of the root or being told what the root is, so that it could go through. Like oftentimes that's what MS Build is going to do as well. There is a magical, so this is worth noting, inside of MS Build, spoiler for next month's user group, there's a magical MS Build property, $, what is it? MS Build this file. I'm blanking on the exact name, but it's something along the lines of, and actually, I know where it is. I just had it open in that XAML testing. MS Build this file or MS Build this file directory. Because that's what I use in my XAML test one. Those two magical values will give you the path to the currently being built MS Build file, which is, if you put that inside of a CS proj, will be your CS proj. If you put that inside of a targets file, will be a targets file. It's basically a file path reference to your current file. And so oftentimes you can abuse that as a way of getting an absolute directory to yourself. And then once you know where yourself is, relative based on that. And so then it's a little bit safer because those are absolute resolved down to where you are. But that gets you an absolute down to myself, and then I relative up and down the directory structure to land on my my other projects. Right? Like if you're going to assume that data and API and business sit alongside each other, it wouldn't be too bad to say MS Build this file directory ... down in, right? And then combine it together. So that relative path could be fine, but then combine it with that to get you a fully qualified absolute path, because you can absolute then relative your way into where you want to be.
Yep. So this is the one you're referencing then.
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on which one you want, because there's either this file or this directory. So
this file directory.
Yeah, so because if you do this file, that will actually give you like .cs proj for where you're at versus the directory of where you are. So depending on what you're smushing together, I think directory might be more applicable to you. But
yeah, I think you're right.
But either way, that's a very convenient one to abuse. And because you're a source generator, you can kind of assume latest MS Build. because before you had to worry about which properties were available in which version of MS Build. And if somebody uses old Visual Studio, this one won't be defined, and yada yada yada. You're a source generators, so at the point they're installing you, they've already said that I'm at least on C#9, which means I'm on the newer compiler of VS 2022, which means I'm gonna be on MS Build 17. We're probably safe. There's not going to be a lot of mix.
Okay.
So
cool.
At least in terms of stuff I saw, I think that's it.
Okay.
Oh,
cool.
One other comment. I saw substring calls. You're familiar with it?
Yes.
You're familiar with range? Do you C#?
So funny thing. I saw range, and it was a while back, and I was like, oh, this is cool, and I tried using it, and it was like,
you probably don't. You don't have access to it, do you? Oh, you
Probably
don't.
Not. No,
you don't, because source generators are net standard 2.0.
Yeah, because I think you're referencing this piece, right? Where is it?
Yes.
Parser and.
Yes. Well, yeah, like for example, because range syntax, you do name square brace 1 ... close square brace, and you're done. And it's pretty and wonderful, and everyone's happy. And boo. Yes. So, yeah. Never mind. Scratch that. You can't do it. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Function capitalized, not checking length of string. Oh, yeah. So somebody in chat calls out that your capitalized function, you blow up on empty string. I assume you have nullable reference types turned on in this project? Can we assume non-null at this point?
No, I don't think
No. And Lang version preview. What are you doing?
Hey,
Net standard 2.0. I was gonna say net standard 2.0 and Lang version preview. It's like, are you pulling in C#11 and net standard 2? Like, you can do that. I don't think I recommend it. And technically, you might be able to actually pull off ranges. Don't do this, but. So there's a separation in C# features between ones that require compiler support and one that require runtime support. And most of the time, if it's just compiler support feature, if you pull in the right stuff, there's a remarkable amount of duck typing that the compiler does. And so you might actually be able to get away with declaring the range and index structs in the right namespace, and then Lang version new enough and get away. I haven't tried this, but I've done this on other C# features where you can pull stuff in and it just magically works. You then have to be aware that when you rev your target framework up later, you then get a type collision that looks weird because it says, hey, thingy, which is identical to thingy, is a collision. And you're like, what? It's colliding with itself? Well, no, you actually added one that happened to have to match the same names. You forgot about it, and then your world ends.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But other than that, I think it's cool. I think it's a great idea. Like, I love Coalesce. I think Coalesce is awesome. So, real quick, for people who may not have been here at the beginning. Oh, I didn't save it. Hang on. I can cheat this. Boom. For people who don't,
I can bring it up.
The problem is I shared multiple YouTube links and I don't know which one it is. This one. So for people who are interested, Coalesce is a framework put out by our company that does a whole bunch of source generation for putting together ASP.NET Core applications. It's pretty cool. I linked the YouTube thing, but the YouTube one has a link to the project. Ignore the version numbers up at the top. I will complain to the appropriate parties tomorrow and tell them they should go and update those into something newer. I can assure you Coalesce runs with a much more modern stack.
This also bothered me.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. I noticed that the other day.
We will beat Andrew up tomorrow. Or Andrew, if you're watching, Please go fix it. Pretty please.
But yeah.
So I think that if that answers your question, do you want to go and poke at one of those things and take a run at it? Because like some of those things, just getting the embedded resources are probably not a terribly difficult thing to do.
Yeah. If we could maybe do that and change the config to pull from the CS project, that'd be fantastic.
Cool.
Be a great place.
So let's start with those files then, and so we've got those template files that are going in as embedded resources. Show me the CS proj for this real quick, and let's take a quick gander, because I assume.
Oh, it's not going to let me open it now.
What is going on with your Visual Studio? Like, why?
I might need a hard reset on this.
I am very confused at your Visual Studio. Now, I will warn you, I run the preview builds and don't see any of these problems. So clearly the issue is you aren't on beta software.
Apparently that's a problem.
That is clearly the problem.
So yeah,
I just get different problems in different forms. You're gonna.
Let me restart my VS.
I like how you cleverly hid your screen. If you want, I also have a button that clicks to hide your screen.
It's okay. I just didn't know what I had open back there.
It's like
whether it be my, actually, surprisingly, you guys are lucky. This is the only time I have less than like at least 150 tabs open. So
that's how you know you're a developer, when you have at least 150 tabs.
Ooh. And that's why I need 32 gigs of RAM. There's no way I'd handle it without it.
Some people say it's for Docker. Everyone else knows it's for Electron apps and Chrome.
Oh man. Yeah, this is. I don't know what's happening here.
Can you right click and go properties? It's acting like it's so. Oh, I know what it is. Hang on. You've got 2 rows of tabs. See that thing just to the left of your Solution Explorer?
You're right. I forgot I had this open. Yep. Good call.
That's what it's doing.
My bad. And that's where my template files were. Yep. It all makes sense now. Let's just fix that real quick. There we go.
There we are. I was like, I could have sworn I had seen these before.
I know they were open. I was really confused.
Okay, so first thing I'm going to propose is so you've got a weird mix of, I'm guessing you did some of this in the Visual Studio IDE and some of this in the CS proj.
Yeah.
So, okay, so a couple things to note. When you have arbitrary files, the project SDK, which is what you're using on line 1. Okay, actually, real quick, can we go turn line numbers on, pretty please?
Yeah.
Tools options. And then on the left, you want source, or not source control. It's the text editor bits. You can search for line numbers too in the top if you want. I was just going to propose that you set it on. So yeah, text editor. You could set it on a specific language, or you could go all languages and turn it on there. So go down to the general underneath all languages. Line numbers. Yeah, and then on. Huzzah! I've never understood why people want line numbers on for some and off for others. I don't know what file I don't want line numbers on for.
I don't know how I ended up in a state where I had it on for some and not others, but
I think it actually may start like that from a clean slate.
That actually would make sense. I just installed 2022.
Okay, so that could have done it. Okay, so when you use the SDK project format there, it has some built-in globbing patterns, which is like your star bits for certain known file types of like CS files are compiled. I'm trying to think what other ones. I think image files are resources, etc. In our case, we don't want any of that garbage. We have a .template file which is being added to the none group. And in your case, you want it to be added to the embedded resource group. Because MS Build really only has properties and sets, or I think they call it properties and items. I prefer sets because my mathematical brain likes that terminology better. So in our case, so what your thing is doing there is so you've got a little bit of duplication in that you're removing it from the none set up on line 11, but then you're also, and that's doing a nice globbing thing, but you've got template and then template tester. I don't see template tester anywhere. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, that was prior. I believe that was prior to
your other ones.
Originally, yeah. Basically, you know, when I first started using Cottle, I built out just a test project to get my syntax right and everything, so I didn't have to run the entire generator to make sure that the template was doing what I expected it to do. So this actually should be just that.
Yeah. So once you do the
be removed.
Yep, because now you'll glob pattern into all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same thing can be applied to the embedded resource on line 10, right? Drop template tester, just template /**. Because that will find all the things. We could get slightly less aggressive and do only template files, because we could do like star.template if we wanted to be a little more careful. Or we could just say, I don't care, anything you go in there is going to be a template, and if it's not, bad on you. So
go with that for now.
You can delete item group from 14 to 19 now too, because that's now the same thing as what's on line 10. Oh, I'm sorry, that's embedded resource remove. So change that remove on 10 to include.
To include, yeah, okay.
And then, because the other thing is last in wins.
This is the, well, and this is functionally what you're saying, where remove everything and then just only include the template files, right?
Well, no, I was going to propose
would be the same as dot template and then do this as an include, right?
Yeah, but in this case, there's nothing really to remove there per se, because you don't have any types that are going to be included by default. Because all of these removes and includes, all these are doing is in addition to whatever the base SDK is going to give you. Like if your base SDK is one of the web-based ones, like CSHTML files, it knows, I got you, that's a Razor file. I know what item group to put that in. Okay, great. Okay. I don't care. We aren't dealing with CSHTML files, but that's how those things automatically get picked up.
Okay, makes sense.
Let's see here. One other thing while we're in here and dealing with it, I don't know if you care, but you can delete lines 28 through 30. Those look like something that got set by the visuals. So whenever I see config pipe platform equals value, that is something that the property window, the GUI for managing CS projects in Visual Studio sets for you. That thing hasn't gotten much love in years and is almost assuredly going to put in a very messy version of what you could write by hand. So you can whack it, because more importantly, that's also coming in by default from the SDK. So you're not gaining anything by resetting it.
Makes sense.
Okay, scroll down just a little bit. While we're in here, we'll just look.
Yeah.
And then that's all CS proj stuff. I do like how you added a message to your output. Very, very good. See, you've already done a lot of somewhat advanced MS Build stuff. I'm looking at that line 45. So
don't give me too much credit.
This was a Stack Overflow copy and paste developer move?
It was. Somebody had already figured out how to do this properly, or at least do it with their project, and I was like, okay, I kind of get what you're doing.
Copy paste.
Make a few changes here and there. Copy paste. But yeah. I'm not gonna play like I know exactly what this is doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you've got like the iteration, the arrow syntax, the add. I'm like, that you get all that done. You're doing pretty good. I mean, that's like the that's like the top level tier advanced MS Build level stuff. It's like you can now be my next co-presenter for the user group.
No, I'm good. I'll pass.
Cool.
Maybe in a couple months. Maybe I'll be there.
Sweet. So I'll do it in 2 months then.
Number 2.
So real quick, let's just test our embedded resource thing. So save your CS proj and then check the properties on your template. On any of your template files, if you just highlight them. So you'll note your build action down there on the bottom. I'll keep my head out of the way.
Still embedded resource.
Still set to embedded resource. And yeah, nothing else really matters because we don't care to copy it to the output directory. And away we go. Okay. So go ahead and build the project, and then let's go and take a quick peek-see at it, and we will pull it up. Do you have something that pops open DLLs that you like, or should
I do
I
not.
suggest something?
You should try to give me some great tool.
Well, I don't know if I don't.
Shill a good tool.
See, the problem is the one that my go-to one is probably not what people should use because it is dying.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, so Dnspy is usually it has been my go-to tool, but the repo on GitHub is the author marked the repo as archive and disappeared.
Ooh, that's too bad.
With not a lot of explanation. There's a few alternative projects that are out there, but there's a lot of cool stuff in here that just, and I don't know whether it was, hey, there's alternatives, no point in continuing. I found a Reddit thread at one point where people guessed at it. The other thing we can do is we can just test this with C# directly. So jump to your code where you were trying to load in the resource streams, and we can. You don't happen to have
What?
You don't happen to have like a unit test project for this, do you, by any chance?
Remember that question about what's the best way to test
A source generator? And somebody may have told you don't.
Somebody may have told me don't.
And then he realized the error of his ways.
And then subsequently send me some information on doing so, but I only got that information today.
Yeah, details. details. Because the easiest thing to do will be, show me that code where you were trying to load in the resource stream. Where was that at one point? Yeah. So this is most of what I would end up telling you to do. Because we just need to really clean this up a little bit. But I don't think that's probably the right resource stream.
Okay.
Let's just install Dnspy real quick and go at it.
Cool.
Chaco install Dnspy.
Ooh, you're hoping that I have Chaco installed right now.
Okay.
That may or may not be
the releases section on that GitHub page is another option. How do you not have Chaco installed?
Okay, I do have Chaco. Okay, we're good.
I can't read your error message. Oh. You're in an admin prompt? No. You're in a user prompt. You know better than that.
I miss the days when you could just always be an admin. I know that it's not the safest thing, but
I long for the days where I get called in to fix people's computers because things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. I don't long for that much.
No, not that much.
Not that much.
Run the script, yes to all.
Because this tends to, the other easy way is we write some unit test code very similar to the other stuff that you had, to just pull it apart that way. Okay. Which is not terribly difficult, but then we can get the embedded resources back out. So question in the chat: what are we trying to do with Dnspy? What is it for? Wonderful question. So Dnspy is a program for decompiling assemblies. You'll note that it's got a couple bullet points there about what it's useful for. You want to just pop your font size up a little bit for me, Casey?
Yes, sir.
Gracias. It has some cool things where you can actually edit a precompiled assembly. It's worth noting when you're running this, it is looking at decompiled source, not the actual source code of it. In our case, we're just using it to pop open a DLL and look at its embedded resources. So that's all we're after, is to pull out the embedded resource information from an assembly. it has a lot of other uses. There are also tools like Dnspy is another fairly common one that people like to use as a decompiler. The other option is we could have just written some C# code to pop open the assembly and look at the resource streams. So
Give me one moment. I have a dog that needs to go outside.
perfect.
Uno momento, por favor.
Run for it. So Dnspy has been my go-to decompiler tool for a while. I love it. The problem is it is probably end of life. I say probably because of my comment earlier about how the GitHub repository was archived with not a lot of explanation. It just kind of quietly stopped. The author stopped doing stuff with it, and no explanation, and it just kind of disappeared. So it's fairly cool. You can get away with a lot of stuff with other developer tools as well. The JetBrains products, for if you want to like decompile somebody else's assembly, they will do that for you as well. So Writer, Resharper, .peak is their built-in decompiler, which I believe .peak is free if I remember correctly. Ooh. Let me do this real quick. Boom. So if I do that, I can take the screen back real quick. So if people are looking for some alternatives, this is another one that typically when people want a decompiler, .peak is another very good one to do. And this has been the one that I used before Dnspy for a long time. As they put out, it is free. Works rather well. I just had been a slightly bigger fan of the other one. But the debugging is for Writer and like Resharper. The same code that powers those powers .peak. It's all JetBrains stuff. Will it be able to view another DLL that's dynamically connected from another app domain? Ooh, that is a very interesting one. So yes, but the app domain won't come into play at this point because we're just going to load it off of disk. We're not going to necessarily look at it in another case. And for the templates that we're going to load, those are going to basically just be embedded straight into the assembly that's going to read them out. So it won't necessarily need to worry about like loading a different assembly from MS Build. That is the cottle problem that Casey is going to end up struggling with. Huzzah!
Huzzah.
Okay, so I will put your screen up. Boom.
Great.
Okay, so your screen's back. Okay,
Alrighty.
so you grab Dnspy, yeah? We'll pop this open. I was just talking about .peak without you. So open Dnspy, and then should show up from Chocolate if you type in Dnspy, yeah, run command. And then it will be a file open, and you'll need to navigate to your bin directory.
Yeah.
Beautiful. From outside of all the things, right? And if you do a control mouse wheel, or I think control plus, you can actually also zoom in your font size on Dnspy as well.
Oh, on Dnspy. I was like, what? Okay. Bin, debug, and standard 2.0.
Okay, so, and actually you can do the same zoom on that left side too, by the way. See, tell me, it's the little things that are like, mwah, mwah.
Everything should be just control scroll wheel. I mean, why isn't everything like this?
It's the number of things that just don't work well. So pop your resources. So there is your, see, this is why I was like, let's just do Dnspy, because there's the resource names. So you can kind of start to divine how the embedded resources get put in here.
Mm-hmm.
So at least in terms of what we need to do, so devise.templates. I believe template file name, based upon what I saw before. So let's jump back in, and then we can pull those out. How are you pulling in those Devise ones before, or did we not get that far?
So
what calls read template besides the 0 references that I see there?
What call? Oh, nothing. This is the replacement for the threaded file.
So this gets to kill off the hard-coded
Yep.
file read alt. See, okay.
I wanted to prep it for code review.
Excellent.
Okay.
So yeah, so your thing was targeting. So I don't know if I would even do an ends with. I would probably do just a resource name, right? So because resource names at that point, your RES is going to be a string. I would potentially just tell you that should be, since we know what it should be. Like your parameter can still be named, but I would then put in I'd just do string interpolation for devise.templates, curly brace name .template.
Yeah.
You've been doing Terraform too long. In C# we put the $sign on the outside.
I know. It's true. I have been doing Terraform for too long. There we go.
There we
That
go.
Looks more proper.
But in front of your curly brace on your name, you're going to need devise.templates, right? So from Dnspy, that full...
because we used that full name.
Yes.
Okay.
That was probably why you ran into matching problems in the first place. Right? So the short version is it's going in underneath assembly.directory.file name.
Okay. There we go. Dang it. I screwed it up again. There we go. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, and then the only other thing to be aware of is right there you are doing, do you care about case sensitivity on the name match?
Well, not really. I mean, I'm going to be the one creating the templates all the time, so
Okay.
I'm going to probably follow the same convention here.
That's perfect.
Lowercase names.
Okay. So that's all good there. That should find it. That should read the resource stream out. Stream reader. Blah, blah, blah. That should be fine. Read to end. So we can clean up some of this code if you want to make it prettier. So the little ... underneath your using statement at the beginning of 13. Auto code button and yeah, that one.
Oh yeah, I forgot that you can do that.
So you can use the new using syntax, and then the last one is the ... on the new stream reader for the target type new expression.
Ooh. Yeah, and that one's fine because it's here.
Yeah,
I have some issues with the.
It is
new
var on the
syntax.
other side of the equals. Let's be clear. Like that's
Yeah.
But in most cases, it's not going to. It typically you're going to have your type name on the left.
Yeah.
So it then ends up being a little nicer to some degree.
Yeah, no, it works.
So, cool.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I would be cleaning up in this file if it were me is I'd go file scope namespaces, but that's a sheerly stylistic thing. So
File scope namespaces.
put your cursor at the end of line 5, auto code button. Nope, the paintbrush. So control period is the auto code button, by the way.
Oh, control period. Thank you. Yes.
File scope namespace.
Oh, see, I
See?
don't like it. I don't like it. I
Again,
like things being inside of other things, man.
It is a completely stylistic feature.
Yeah, that one's gonna be stylistic for somebody else.
I can at least respect that.
I'm not gonna give up my curly braces.
If you like
And my
if you like indentations, by all means, you can have your indentation. Your project, you get to pick those.
The problem is I feel like if I change it here, then I gotta change it everywhere, and then I don't know. It's
Ooh.
rough.
I'll teach you all about .NET format and mass application of the change.
Well, yeah, maybe we can do that sometime.
Cool. So let's go back
But not
and
today.
I was gonna say let's go back and change the invocation of it.
Yes. So,
I think Bruce is making fun of you.
Bruce is here? Bruce! Buddy! Good to see you, brother. I didn't think you'd actually come. Nice to have you on the stream.
The whole idea was I told him you were going to be here.
Oh, wait, Bruce or Bryce?
Bruce, I believe.
Ah, okay,
I'm going from memory of who's who because I have to guess based on screen names.
Fair enough.
So
Bruce, good
if
to see you, buddy.
I've misidentified you, I apologize. Here in a minute, we'll find out that I can't keep names straight. I actually get yours wrong all the time, Casey. So
Oh, no worries.
I really need to make myself a little like spreadsheet or something.
Well, and what I need to do is in your Discord, I need to switch it to my real name.
Make it easier.
Change your channel name.
I go by Slash these days.
Yeah, that's Bruce, all right. That is Bruce.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So let's.
Yeah.
Do we have a way of running this to validate?
Yeah, and let me switch it here real quick.
Because I assume we're working now, but you know, little things like test.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll get there. Let me switch this around real quick.
It's okay. You watched last week's stream where I struggled through it. So I will explain my comment about testing source generators too. Well, you figure out where you're going. So previously, my argument, and I think I may have even said this on my XAML test stream when I did it a while back, was that you don't need to test source generators. You test the output of your source generator to make sure that I don't need to validate that it generates the right code, but I will write a test against the code that it generates, and as long as what it generates behaves appropriately, I'm good. And that works for most of the stuff. The one case where it falls apart is if your source generator is designed to produce warnings or similar, and you want to validate that in particular situations, it produces appropriate feedback. In that case, you can't write a test against what it didn't generate, so it's not useful there. So I've got some sample code that we'll probably pull in at some point and confirm that it does in fact, that we can generate and do tests against it. Spoiler alert, it follows a lot of what the test projects look like if you do file new project and generate a Roslyn analyzer. So there's that.
There's that.
Okay. Do.
Yeah, let me just pop out of this. There we go.
So I'm assuming. Can we look at rendered code? Did it generate something? It looks like it generated something. That looks.
There's no good visualize. Oh, there we go. That's what I was.
Text visualizer's close enough. I mean, that looks like C# stuff.
That's C# stuff, and it pulled it perfectly. Yeah. Beautiful. References. Everything looks good. Yep. Cool.
That seems a little too easy. That seems way too easy.
Very nice. Well, and I knew it already worked because we had already run through the DTO. My next breakpoint was at the mapping profile, and the DTOs come first, so I knew it worked. But
details.
And actually, let's let this continue, finish off, and I think now we should be able to see. Oop, wrong button. There we go. Pop down into here. Group DTO, that could use some help on spacing. That's still generating in the wrong spot. I need to change that. This does look right, although I'm not getting syntax highlighting, which is kind of weird. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is actually a mistake that I made too. I need to fix that.
Well, some of your syntax highlight
type on this.
Well, that one's a constructor. You're not supposed to have it, but you're missing what I assume to be public class on line 7.
Yeah, no, that's actually
that's probably what's killing most of your syntax highlighting, I think.
I think you're right. Oh, it's because I never
Yeah, so you want
replaced that.
class probably after
Yeah.
partial.
Probably. Okay, so that'll fix that.
And you know what you can do? So you don't actually need to have that if condition there. You can always generate a class as partial, and if there's not another partial piece to it, the compiler doesn't care.
Really?
So you can
I was
always
unaware of that.
you can always just blindly put partial in front of it.
And that's of course not true, obviously, for partial methods, though. Correct.
Correct. Partial methods have a slightly higher restriction because partial classes, the compiler literally doesn't think. It just mashes them all together into one big class and compiles that. It's no more complicated than that. You still will want to put the partial keyword there. But I would propose that you always just put the partial keyword there. Because the partial keyword was initially put there before source generators, because we still had things that generated source code even before source generators were a thing. XLST or similar, or some of like the old EF stuff would do things. But most of those generators, even though they weren't running as part of the build, they would run like pre-build or similar and get those files in. They would often generate them as partial classes because then it gives you the ability to extend them if you want. The other thing you might consider doing is dropping public from the front.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that last week. And I could. It obviously wouldn't hurt anything to do it. My thought there was, if they're not doing a custom, then they're really not going to generate the other side of the partial. And
it will be internal. Yeah, it'll be internal at that point. So, but if you leave it like that, it then gives them the ability, if they need it public for something, they can do it. Whereas if you generate public on this side, there's no way for somebody to you either have to put in some switch for them or similar. So oftentimes when people are genning these up, that's the way they tend to do it, is building that out. So it's like, okay.
And there's no need for it to be public anyways. Like it's not a requirement that the mapping profile be public. So yeah, that makes sense.
The only thing I could see why somebody might want it public is if they were looking to do like AutoMapper has on the mapper configuration class, when you load in a profile, it has a cert configuration is valid. And so it's very common to have that call live in your unit test project where you feed in your AutoMapper configuration into your test. Call assert configuration is valid. That way you can guarantee that when people configure up their mappings, that they haven't done anything stupid. Right?
Yeah.
I guess... Well, this one might just be failing by virtue of the fact that we don't have the word class on it.
Yeah.
So the type, it just hasn't found the type.
Build, rebuild. Pop this back up, and we'll rebuild that. And cancel. Woo!
Woo! I assume woohoo.
That's some woohoo.
Yay!
It broke. It's not going to show us that it broke here, but, well, rather here.
Hey, but at least now generated syntax highlighting. Huzzah. It is a little disappointing that it doesn't show slightly more stuff. But I don't know.
Okay.
What do you mean? Did we miss something?
This looks like valid C# code to me, but
I would start with the error. Well, so we may need to check the one above it, because that one still has the expected enable, disable, or restore. So we may just want to
fix that template. I'll just reopen it. The hell with it. And you were thinking that it should just always be nullable, right?
I was thinking that you would set it at the very top of the file and have your parameters pass in the value. So I would do like even before you're using pound nullable and then curly brace, nullability or whatever you want to call that parameter.
No equals or colon, correct?
Correct. Yeah, because I'm making a little bit of an assumption on this templating engine, but I think if I understand it correctly, yeah. And then that will just need to get set to either enable, disable appropriately. And my thought would be that when you query your data project, if we just make the rule / assumption that if you set nullability on your data project, you're setting it on your other projects as well. Because that is kind of a catch-22.
We do still have the same problem. I don't have access to the semantic model.
So, but if we generate up, if we do have access to the semantic model when the data project's compiled, and if rather than reparsing the code in the business and the API one, if it goes back to that other one, that make
what we save off.
Correct. You can pull. You can query out what it's set to once.
So let me start with this.
You could set it to just enabled for the moment, and just
that's where I'm gonna start. Nullable types.
That way the template just runs appropriately, but then getting that value at a later point. You don't want value true. You want want
value true.
No, because the value is going in after the pound nullable. And the values that you want after pound nullable are either enabled, disabled, or restore.
This is a cottle thing.
But how will it know to replace that with the string enable?
Oh, duh. Sorry, I was thinking true versus false rather than enable versus disable. You are correct. My bad.
You're correct. At some point, you will need to go through and figure this out. Do you need to do from string? How are your other ones? I'm just looking at like entity name or base namespace.
No, you're right. I don't need to.
Again, I don't know cottle, but I'm just and lowercase enable.
Enable.
Yeah. See, I don't know it, but I can infer things based on your other code.
Yeah, and I'm just not thinking about it straight. Anyways, okay, so yeah, that'll at least handle that case. For the DTOs.
And that'll get you past at least the errors that you saw there.
Yep. Not clean. Rebuild. There we go.
Okay, so what's that error there? Group DTO is a type. That is in managed API though.
Yeah, that's.
What is managed profile API and why is it unhappy? Oh, I bet you it's missing a namespace.
Well, I think that it's just not liking. No, because it has the API DTO namespace, which is where this has ended up. I think it's just because that didn't get enabled still. And that's because, so when I was thinking of the template, and I may not have actually done this in the template correctly, yeah. So this is how I was actually thinking of it when we were doing that. And the reason I put,
value true.
or value, actually this would be enabled, but.
Oh, well, you would still, so if that's the case, I think what you would want to do is pull the pound nullable inside of that if condition. Right? Leave it as nullable ambiguous unless that value is set to true.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you don't want to end in a situation where you just have pound nullable by itself. That's bad.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, that should get us where we want to be then.
I have to say the syntax of cottle is fairly intuitive. Doesn't feel overly elegant, but it's fairly intuitive. Yeah, the only thing I'm not sure I like is having to backslash every single one of my curly braces.
That's, well, and I can get away with that by just putting a semicolon there and
see, we could get rid of a couple of them. See, now you're embracing it.
Now I'm finding the reasons why I might do it, but only for my for my templates.
So that's actually something worth also calling out too. Generally, if you're generating code, you oftentimes don't necessarily want your generated code to have latest language features, unless you can ensure that the place you're going to generate into will be on that.
Always, yeah. That makes sense.
But again, you can at least currently, if somebody's using a source generator, you can assume they're already on C#9, so
9
you're not
or better at least.
Yeah, so it's like you're not really losing out on a lot of language features, but at a certain point that will start to become a bigger thing for people.
Issue. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, I can just be an Alt Tab.
It would be nice if there was a way to, like, in the source generator, query effective version, right? Like, I want a simple API that says, do they support, C#10? If yes, generate this. If not, generate this.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of want to,
nice.
is C#lang version or greater?
Enable, not enabled.
Oh.
Well, let's make sure. Shoot. No, it just didn't generate at all. And that's because...
Well, so it probably did generate. So recall from last time that generated source area is really obnoxious. It is very iffy if the thing fails for any reason. It is great when it succeeds to look at the result, but if there's a failure, it oftentimes doesn't show appropriate information. And I end up going to the OBJ directory, assuming you turned it on. But in this case, I think we can flip that from enabled to enable.
Yeah, we can flip this to enable, and then we can also move this to true.
In the context
parser. There we go. Yep.
Because this is just value true. This was the thing you were saying where you have to do this for cottle so that they can do their if conditions or something, correct?
Yeah, it's some. Honestly, I haven't dug into their code enough, or gotten enough information from their API to understand exactly what they're doing with this value struct. But they are taking everything that's not a string and turning it into a struct.
Got it.
Which is interesting.
I assume it has to be for logic purposes because you have to know the difference between true Boolean and true conditional thing. So the question of what is cottle's role here? So typically in source generators, you end up doing something like, as the name implies, you have to do something to generate C# source code. So in this case, you could do either string builder or horrible string concatenation like Casey's showing up there. And in all these cases, they work. Wait, you have a string builder that you loaded up with string concatenate? Yeah, Casey. You've defeated the point of the string builder.
Well, I used a string builder down here, but yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So you end up doing something either akin to this, where you use like a string builder to build up your source code. There are Roslyn APIs that are really ugly that you can use to generate your code. But at the end of the day, your source generator basically has to build up a string that can contain the source code. So however you get to that string is up to you. In this case, Cottle is being used just as a templating engine, similar to like ASP.NET Core's Razor or similar, just to be an easy way to generate up, generate up the source code. So,
Bless you again.
thank you.
So that should get us back to where we want to be.
Save template before you build.
Yep.
Cottle greater than T4. So I will say this: T4 is really good for certain use cases. Specifically around like XML based stuff, T4 can be really powerful and really awesome. A lot of T4 was like the first source generator that was actually decent in the .NET space, that worked really, really well. And so there's a lot of people who have built things on top of T4, but I wouldn't reach for it as my go-to templating tool today. I would definitely reach for something like Cottle, something like Razor. And that Razor even had a good comparison of on their performance benchmarks, comparing out like Razor Lite to them. And apparently, at least according to their benchmarks, Cottle is significantly faster. I haven't used it before, and all I have is their screenshot of a benchmark to prove it, but I'll trust them.
Yeah. Actually, that was pretty interesting to look at, too. Pop that up. Benchmark.
There. Yeah, so at least a couple different options in there. So Razor Lite, you can see at least on their benchmark scores, Razor Lite was slow. And Razor is typically fairly performant, and it may be interesting. I don't know if they call out exactly which version. I see that they're doing .NET Core 3.1 up above, at least when they ran these. So there have been a lot of improvements in .NET 5, .NET 6 that could sway some of these numbers. I don't know if they would sway them that much, especially since Cottle is built on .NET to begin with. So a lot of like the string stuff that they did to make Razor faster, Cottle would probably ingest those changes as well. Oftentimes you come to this idea of, do you want functionality or do you want speed? String builders are fast if you want speed.
Yeah.
But you lose functionality. Hey, Code Life. Thank you for dropping in. Hope you had a good stream. We are playing on the C# source generators. I've got a colleague helping me out today. Or I shouldn't say helping me out. I'm kind of helping him, I guess.
You're helping me.
Building out a source generator for basically starting from your database models and building out your, we'll call it web tier and business tier stuff. So that's at least where we're going. Or where we're trying to go, at least. Okay.
Yeah, this is the project that I'm working on, Devise. Yeah.
I got you.
Anyways,
I got you. I got you, Link. Don't worry.
Beautiful.
Cool. And welcome, all Code Life followers. Thank you for dropping in. Appreciate it. Okay, so why did we not get your pound nullable to generate? This seems...
That's a good question.
Did we rebuild all the things?
I believe we did.
Debugging. Yeah, so source generators are an interesting case for debugging in that you have to build them separately and then rebuild the project that leverages them to look at the results. So it gets to be... Yeah.
The results don't always generate, or at least not visually generate for you correctly.
Yeah, this is one of those rougher areas of Visual Studio where the source generator output, yeah, it's definitely meta level coding. But the generated output in Visual Studio usually shows what's there on success. The problem is typically success isn't the one you care about, it's failure. Close this one down, Casey. Those yellow lines make me suspect that your Visual Studio thinks you have an edit. No, not all of Visual Studio, just your... Oh, okay, or all Visual Studio.
Too late.
I was going to say, those yellow lines make me suspect that it thinks that there's edits in your local one, and so it's not reloading the file because it thinks your local one has changes, and it's trying to not blow away work in progress.
That makes sense.
Darn Visual Studio being helpful.
Right.
Yeah, and those ugly pop-ups are self-induced pain. So last week's stream, I kind of walked people through some of the samples of building source generators, and the part of the problem is that the debugging story is a little interesting in how you have to attach the debugger to it, because you're trying to debug part of your own build process. So you get into this fun inception land. I was working on something and IntelliSense was not working. It was horrible. I feel your pain.
Yes.
I think we've hit that at least a couple times tonight. It must be tonight. Hang on.
It is.
My go-to
Definitely
solution,
tonight.
Mountain Dew. I think that's too meta. Mark may sue you. Love it. So Casey, back to your build air though.
Mm-hmm.
Can you jump back to the code where you were at? Okay, so it still thinks. Can you jump to the profile API one? No, I was hoping to see the generated output.
We're not going to have any generated output because it failed. I don't think, at least. Oh.
Well, no, we should, because the generation succeeded. The build after generation failed. Because remember, the build process started, generator ran, added source to our compile. The compile then finished, and the compile went to finish and went, I don't know what you're talking about. So the one thing that's interesting me right away is the missing semicolon. So that first line is interesting where it can't find group DTO. Sure, fine. What is that line number that it's reading? Sorry, your screen's a little blurry.
These
for me. Is that 13?
All 13. All 13 down to that one.
So what's interesting is it claims to have found line 12, but not line 13.
Yeah.
That feels very not true. Something's lying. Do you have it generating the output files? It's always the semicolon. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
The OBJs?
Yeah, the one inside of OBJ.
No,
do you have that thing turned on?
Don't have it turned on.
Do you want me
remind me how to do that?
Thank you, Code Life, for the follow. I will find you the code, because I don't remember what it is, but I know where to find it.
Beautiful.
The project I worked on last stream has it. Which means...
And I am not against taking somebody else's code.
No, it's not plagiarizing if you steal from yourself.
Exactly. Or steal from somebody who's willing to give it to you.
Why aren't you using live share? So in this case, live share we had talked about doing. It gets a little weird in this case because it's live share into two different Visual Studio instances. It may not be obvious that Casey is switching between two solutions. So he's got one solution where the source editor is the source editor is being compiled and built, and a second solution that's actually leveraging that source editor. So it ends up in kind of this weird situation. So it's definitely possible, but we ended up deciding that it might be just a little bit easier to not bother. Sorry.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. I'm looking for where I put it. Okay. I'm just going to send it to you via whatever chat application I land on first. Teams wins.
All right, teams wins.
Not a sentence I say very often. I have a very strong love-hate relationship with teams. sometimes more
Understandable.
sometimes more in the hate side of things. So take that line and drop it right inside your default property group. So between lines 3 and 6. So by default, source generators don't produce output files because writing files to disk is expensive and slow.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to write files to disk, you have to turn it on, which isn't horrible, but and just to be clear, that's the wrong one. You want that property set on the project that's consuming your source generator, not the one that's building your source generator.
Thank you.
So, and bear in mind, it's not specific to a source generator. That's all your source generators will turn it on. So if you have like 5 installed, they will all generate output files. Let's see. I noticed such a feature in Windows 11. I have a laptop with 16 gigs of RAM, running Visual Studio 2022, a browser with a couple tabs, one additional program. The RAM is almost under 16 gigs. In Windows 10, somehow it didn't consume so much RAM. That is an interesting bit. So, one, it's unfortunately, it is very possible for it to start consuming that much RAM. So Visual Studio 2022 is the first one that is 64-bit because it needed to consume more RAM, which means people with large solutions and whatnot can now load them. With that said, if you fire up a solution hypothetically that has 451 projects, I can tell you that takes roughly 8.5 gigs of RAM, depending on the number of source files exactly, and can feel a little slow and sluggish. But that certainly beats the Visual Studio 2019, which would just fail to do it. Generated, Casey, at the very top. And then it'll be your generator name, blah, 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 and there are your files. Click and drag into Visual Studio of choice. And Visual Studio will now see these things as outside of the project, but because it's going to write to the same thing. The other thing is, and I don't know of anything specific in Windows 11 that would do this, but yeah, a browser with a couple tabs can sometimes go crazy. Specifically, Edgeium or Chrome can, because they keep track of tab history even after you close tabs. To get back, they often have stuff running and they try to be helpful. So that all looks correct. So jump over to the other one though, the profile API. So this is the one where it's squawking. So Secret Santa API group. What was the group DTO namespace? Just to be clear, it was secretsanta.data.groupdto.
secretsanta.api.dto.
Okay. That matches. That's fine. So that all seems good to me. Why would this break? Copy the contents of this file. Go to any other... copy the whole thing. Go to any other file in this project and paste it. Because you don't get because it's seen as a generated file, it won't treat it like a compile thing. Oh, interesting. So it's not finding the namespace. Okay, so it technically did miss the error. Hold up.
Lowercase. No? It doesn't matter.
Well, casing would matter on the namespace, not the folder name. The folder name should match it. I'm curious why it tried... So real quick, go and grab the group DTO class and paste it in here. I'm wondering if there is something about this that's not generating appropriately. That's all legit. Okay, so now go back to your other one. It should now, the other place where we pasted. Sorry.
problem.
Oh, so that's now happy, but it's now missing. I'm confused why it would be missing, because I assume you replaced group.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it missing these types? Okay, let's go with process of elimination. Undo the two files that you blew away. Obviously, let's put those back. And then change, can you tweak your source generator to not generate the profile?
Yep.
Let's have it not gen the profile for the moment, and then work back.
Backwards.
Well, so is that thing there only going to do? Because we still want the other thing to generate.
The DTOs?
Oh, right. Okay, dumb. I can't read. DTO generator, I'm going to guess generates the DTOs. Okay.
Possibly.
I'm not a bright person, but I'm going to guess that if you named it DTO generator and it does something else, that's on you.
It generates the controllers, duh. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, let's run this again.
Cancel.
2 cancels later.
2 cancels later. Okay, so that is
Okay.
So jump to that. I assume that's your usage of the profile?
Yep.
Okay, so comment that
Correct.
line out real quick. How did it find it? Or is that just your IntelliSense being dumb? I'm going to go with IntelliSense being dumb. Okay,
Sure.
Rebuild one more time. I want to see this thing actually build all the way successfully. I know, I'm asking a lot.
There we go.
Okay, so that's better. Okay, so go, now that we've got that working, go ahead and put the profile back on. Or actually, before you put the profile on, do you have the rolling clipboard enabled? Windows V?
Windows V? I don't think so.
Ooh, I was gonna say, because your generated file, your generated file should still be there. Can you go copy your generated file again? Do you still have that open? But rather than generating the profile, not that one.
Which one? Oh, the profile?
Justin Bieber, thank you for the bits. I appreciate it.
And you want it in the...
Put it at the bottom of, in the other project. The target. No problem, Justin Bieber. We tried it. I told Casey earlier when he asked what format I wanted to do this in, I was like, I want to have fun, and then everyone else gets to come along for the ride. But paste it outside the namespace. You're using old school namespaces, so we can get away with this garbage.
Oh yeah, that's
See
true.
that? We can have multiple namespaces in a file. I mean, we could create a new
But
file.
it's only because I'm using the curly braces.
Because no one should do this. Just to be clear, this is a bad idea. So move those usings to the top, though, because those are still not valid. So here's what's interesting. Paste those in. This seems wrong. So, one, how did it... Oh, you've already got AutoMapper included. So that's the way the reason those two are showing as optional. Scroll down. Does this code compile now? Why is it... Is it literally the spaces? Delete the spaces from that. Oh! No less than sign on the end of 57. That's why it's confused. The compiler can't figure it out because it doesn't have the... Oh.
And I think I remember when I accidentally did that. Or rather, I don't remember when I did it, but I'm pretty sure I know when I did it.
Oh. Yeah.
Alrighty.
It wasn't a semicolon. It was one little alligator.
One little backwards facing alligator. Okay, so I'm gonna pop this back. We're gonna go back.
Delete that extra thing that we pasted in.
Yep.
So pro tip, that is often my way of debugging generated code when it's not obvious to me from looking at it what the compile error is telling me. Sometimes it helps to just put it in something where you can see the red squiggles. Alligator. I will say I have struggled with good ways of verbally communicating code to people because I pair with people quite a bit during the day. And I have found that like there is not necessarily agreed upon language. And I found that less than greater than, oftentimes people get confused as to which one is which.
Okay, cool. I think we're good then. Rebuild the generator.
Casey, how do you pronounce your screen name?
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros. There was
the good old snake eating its own tail.
I didn't even think of that with my alligator comment. It will be the snake mouth from now on.
The snake mouth.
So something else you might consider doing on this source generator is you could theoretically try to partial up the startup. So right now you have like add auto mapper, where it's targeting a generated file, which that code obviously doesn't compile until you generate it. But we could partial up the startup class, do a partial method or similar that moves them apart.
So yeah, I 100% agree. And in the long run, that's where I think I'm going to end up being, because I'm going to want to do like the add scoped for all the repositories that are created in the business project, the auto mapper. I have had that thought before. I've just not gotten there yet.
Cool. I was going to say, there's always this weird tension between when you generate stuff versus what you make the end user write.
Right. Well, and honestly, I mean, my goal is to end up with as close to you just generate 4 projects that are empty, and then you give us entities, and then it generates most everything else.
Oh, Casey, you can do much better than that. Okay, hear me out. .NET new, well, I was going to say .NET new template. Thanks to me being here, the issue was found. .NET new template to generate the projects with your NuGet package already referenced and ready to go. Hey, see you later, Code Life. Thanks for dropping in.
Have a good one.
Because a .NET new template can generate out all the projects, ensure that you have the right relative paths and naming between them, and you can have a pre-canned template ready to go. That way, the workflow for somebody consuming Devise becomes .NET new Devise project space insert my name here. In this case, your project Secret Santa, right? So .NET new Devise space Secret Santa, enter. I get all of the projects genned up for me. I get some sample POCO created so that I have a sample of what to do. Your NuGet package is referenced with your source generator, and as I write more, I'm off to the races. And I have done one command line invocation, and I can F5 build my way to victory.
Ooh, that's pretty beautiful.
I was going to say, picture a better development experience. A 3-tier web application by executing one CLI command. That demos really well.
That does. Okay. I can see I can see this going there.
I like that idea. Just as a thought.
Okay.
Just as a thought.
Mental note taken.
I have to say, I've done a .NET new template for the material design project, and it's been a pull request that I think has sat for nearly a year at this point. Because it's like, well, they aren't necessarily tough. It's just slow going, and I kind of wanted to automate the creation of it rather than having it be a little more manual. Mm-hmm. And I never quite got to that point. And most of the time, I'm the one who's going to be using the template, no one else. So it's like, grumble. How much do I actually need to publish this versus just keeping it locally for myself?
Keep the goodies for yourself. I see.
I mean, most people don't do file new WPF project on a consistent basis. I will do it half a dozen times a week. That's not normal. I admit, I'm not normal. That's
You are not. It's okay.
so for what it's worth. The other thing that may be worth noting too is, and it's probably not worth looking at now, but if you have nullability enabled, there are the entity framework docs lay out a pattern for how you should structure your DB context and your entities for nullable reference types. That can be a little bit challenging if you don't know what to do for, like, if you want to let that be an option for on or off, because you end up generating some really different code, at least at the EF layer, for doing it.
Depending. Okay.
Let's see here. So, would you like to make an error condition in CSproj file and prepare for build if the user does not have automapper, and then display a message that you need to restore the NuGet packages? That's an interesting idea. And that's part of why I would almost venture, because that is a good point, because right now your source generator fails if they run it against a project without automapper.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I almost like the idea of the .NET new template, because you can get them set. You don't, the bar for entry becomes lower, and it's harder for somebody to miss that requirement, because that is a good call out.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, and
sorry, my chat application flagged the words NuGet package as potentially. No, that is a legit term. We're letting that through. Carry on. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Yeah, no, that's actually a really interesting idea. Justin Bieber. I wasn't sure if it was Bieber or Biebler. At this point, this is making a lot of assumptions on the way their project is structured, the things that they're going to be using with their project. I mean, long term, I'd like to get Nswag and a bunch of other components in there, but I will be making a lot of assumptions to start out with. Though in the long run, you're right. I would definitely need to make conditionals for that and take that into account.
So let me ask one other question then of you, Casey.
Yeah.
Because there's going to need to be there's no way to build a project like this without making assumptions. If you make the assumption that people aren't going to arbitrarily just pull in the source generator by itself, and that this source generator is part of a bigger framework, right? If we take Coalesce, for example, Coalesce isn't just a simple NuGet package. It has
just stand alone and work.
Right. It is not something that somebody's expected to just reference this NuGet package and magic comes out the door. You've got to stand the project up appropriately. And they do have I can't remember if it's a .NET new template or a CLI command to scaffold out the beginning. It's one of the two.
CLI.
They've got one of the two where it's one or two commands to get started. Which, great, perfect. That's the dev experience you want. I'm wondering if things like nullability don't need to necessarily be conditioned. Yeah. If you could force somebody, like if the expectation is that somebody's going to start from the template, you could pretty much force in certain conventions. And especially if somebody's starting a brand new project, in my strong opinion is there's very little reason why a new project shouldn't turn on nullable reference types. Existing code, that's definitely a question.
Yeah, problematic.
But in this case, you're never going to have somebody with existing code that migrates. You're always going to be brand new.
To be like a startup. Yeah. Something that you start with.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be genning all of this stuff after you've already written your DTOs or your controllers or any of the above. Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be something else worth considering as well.
Okay.
Of building that out.
Okay.
How late did you want to go, Casey? Because I realize, like, some of us work in the morning. Some of us work in the morning.
I mean, yeah.
I do too. My Mountain Dew's not empty, which means I've got fuel. So.
Well, if you give me 1 second to go grab another soda, then I will be
By all means.
plenty energized. What I'm thinking next is maybe jumping, now that we've got the templates coming in, is jumping into looking at loading config from the CS proj rather than a config file that I force them to use.
Okay, so you do that, and I'm gonna do the little clicky button where I make you go infinite. And you go do that, and I'm gonna talk for a minute and sort of explain. So there's a bunch of great blog posts out here for doing this. This Uno one, I believe, is the one I've used in the past for going and doing it. The secret bit down here, and it's worth noting when people are reviewing blogs on this, even though source generators are new, the API for them has changed at least twice, I think. So they have been they were initially dropped, great, and then there was a bunch of changes made after they went live and people started playing with them and whatnot. So great, that's fine, but that also means that you have to take the documentation that you read with a tiny grain of salt because things might be wrong-ish. But this one appears to be updated, and more importantly, the guys on the Uno platform are great. They do a wonderful job. So, Casey, in terms of what you need to do, I believe so. I don't recall the exact API, but it's pretty similar to this. I'll make this bigger. So, key things to note is there is a MS Build item for exposing particular metadata to your source generator. So for a variety of reasons, source generators don't magically just get access to everything in MS Build, because that could be horribly bad at times. So you have to explicitly say, okay, these things you can have access to, because you could imagine like signing keys or whatnot get dumped in there, and that's probably not something that you want to expose to a third-party code that could, there's nothing stopping a source generator from firing up an HTTP client and posting information out. Probably shouldn't do that, but it is a thing that it could do. But I believe this is what we are looking to do. So, because I dropped this one in there as well, but I believe this is what we are after, is being able to pull this information. And I was trying to pull it up. I think even this compiler visible. Oh no, not that. Search web. Don't do that. Oh, and Roslyn. So, and here's another great one. So underneath the Roslyn project, the cookbook, if people haven't found it, this is another one that's pretty good and usually up to date. Nope, that is not the keyboard shortcut I am looking for. No. I would like this thingy. Come here. U. Here. F. Boom. That one. Yeah. Custom MS build properties and metadata. Here's probably the direct link that you're looking for. So I think this is what we are going for. Right? This is kind of what because this is what I was anticipating using last week for my source generator, where I was thinking of like passing in a switch to override whether it's generating MS build or XUnit or whatever. And I think this is what we want as well. Be aware, I believe this always dumps out as strings. So if you want type conversion, I think you have to roll that yourself.
Do that ourselves. Yeah.
Which isn't horrible. But, and I don't think we care about build metadata, because and maybe we start by looking at your CS proj and write your CS proj the way you want it to look, and then we just beat the source generator until it works appropriately. So, and it's worth noting, this type of thing here is going to need, this item group is going to need to go in the project that's consuming the source generator, which For now, we'll just put it directly in your Secret Santa CS proj. Ultimately, where it will end up going is into that targets file inside of your NuGet. Because remember, if you put a targets file inside of your NuGet with the magical ID, it automatically gets added to the CS proj that's using your NuGet, which is cool. It basically does an automatic import. Again, I'm spoiling all the great content for the user group.
Yeah, and it's
wonderful. It's a great way to abuse things.
Yeah, it merges it into the CS proj rather than generating a file. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, MS Build basically has two passes. An initial pass where it goes through and pulls in all the includes. You can think of it like flattening the imports. Anybody who's looked at like old C code that does the GCC something precompiler something, where it just flattens everything into one big chunk. MS Build does that, and then it goes through and executes everything because it basically builds up the dependency tree and then executes the dependency tree.
Yeah. Okay. This looks like it's bringing in files.
So this, ish. So separate out the difference between the build property and the file level, the build metadata level property, because this is going through like additional files and whatnot. The doohickey that we are probably going after, so I believe we want to add, let's see, compiler visible property here. This will want to add into ours, and then I believe, where was the global? Because we don't need to include, because this is if you want to add the metadata to the additional file set, which we don't care about. And then down after you've included it, blah, 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 not that. This is what you would do to pull in the top level one, I believe. Because this, the second one that they did was attaching metadata to the additional file, to each item in the additional files set. This one was just a property added to the CS proj, which I think, if I understood you correctly, we want to move what was in that JSON file to CS proj properties. Is that correct?
That's the intent. Okay, I get what you're saying now. Yeah.
Now, if you want to, we could write this as a targets file preemptively and import it, and then you could just copy that file back to your source generator project. That way it's already set up and you don't have to like break apart the relevant bits. You want me to show you how to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Man.
So I will, you're up. Okay.
All right.
So go to the the project where the Secret Santa API project, right? That's where we were. Well, actually, I guess it's the data project, isn't it? Where we would most want to read this config from.
I think we'll need to read it from both, but.
Okay. Well, we'll start in the data project, and we'll work our way out. Okay. So right click, add new file. Pick any file type you want because we're gonna right click on your project. Yeah. Because we're going to do, it's going to be an XML based .targets file.
Okay.
So we'll create a .targets file like what we would put in the NuGet package and reference it here. You'll just copy it back to the other repo when after we've made sure that it works. Right? So you could type in XML if you want. It's really not going to matter because we're going to, and then just preemptively name it devise.targets. You have to capitalize the D, because I assume your NuGet package ID is going to just be devise.
Yep.
Okay.
Devise.targets.xml.
Or no XML. Drop the .xml and lowercase the T in targets.
Okay.
Side question: have you reserved that NuGet ID?
I don't think I have, and I don't know how. But if you want to tell me how, I'll do it.
So there used to be a way
I do like the name a lot.
There used to be a way to reserve IDs for a while, and that's no longer possible. The cheater way to do it is you gen an empty NuGet package with the ID you want, upload it, and then unlist the package. So it won't show up in search results, but then it's locked to you. Now
Reserved.
there are
Okay.
ways for at a certain point it to go stale and the team
Somebody to take it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it won't show up in search results and it will then be locked. So yeah, something like that. Okay, so get rid of the XML garbage at the top. we don't do that garbage here. Okay, so
None of that.
targets files look remarkably like CSproj files. So if you ever need to know what to put in one of these, literally copy your CSproj file and remove the SDK attribute.
Okay.
That's it. So the opening tag is going to be just project.
Project. Yeah.
Okay, and then once you're inside of here, you can pretty much do as you wish, which is pretty cool. So just like you could do in the project groups with item groups and not import group,
Yeah.
item.
Yep. I got the wrong.
You guys are so
autocomplete.
smart. I wish I could be like you every day. Probably with less craziness, but thank you, Justin.
Yeah. I ain't that smart. Appreciate it though.
Well,
Got
so
a cat.
so let's start with this.
Cat.
So we show me your JSON file real quick that we're loading in, just so I can get a.
I mean, right now it's super basic, so nice.
So
and
we
easy.
want a project we want a property that's data project, and we want a value that looks kind of something about like that.
About something like that, maybe with a relative path using MS
some
build file, this file, yeah.
So make it fancy, but we basically want a data project. So I don't think you want an item group. I think you want a property group in this case.
Okay.
Because item groups contain sets, property groups contain properties. Right? And at least I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. I'm also noticing that it appears that is interesting. I am noticing their sample in the cookbook uses an item group, and now I'm wondering if I told you wrong.
Because you're looking at the compiler visible item metadata, or rather the compiler visible property.
The compiler visible property.
Yeah,
Do it as an item group because I'm wondering if this thing is expecting a set, not a property, even though that's what we have here. Yeah. Okay, and so I propose that we call this devise underscore, I don't know, data project.
All right, yep. I like it.
As an example. I might not do the underscore between data and project, just in terms of separation, because theoretically all properties can be set / overridden. So somebody could theoretically get in and replace this property on you, because kind of like PowerShell or JavaScript, where if you just assign to the property later, the last in wins. MS Build's the same way.
All right, fair enough.
Which is fun. Okay, so then we have the enable logging property. Now we want to set that property in the CSproj. So let's do a property group.
In here or in the data project?
We'll do it in here.
Okay.
And there's a subtle reason for that. So do devise underscore data project.
Yeah. Stop it. Ugh.
Your pair programmer is very aggressive.
He is very, very aggressive.
Okay, and then this is where you're going to do like your ... whack for now at least. No, it was, I wouldn't self-close it. Sorry, all I see is the tail go right across.
Oh, you're all good.
Yep. And then this is where you would put the value for it.
So we had that additional, or not that additional, the MS build this file directory.
Yes. So I don't know if you want to. I don't know. I don't think you want to use that here yet because the relative nature of where that's going to be, you probably want to bring that in at the point you create the NuGet package. It's not a cat's tail. It's an input carrot.
So then in this, when we're, because this ended up getting packaged with Devise, right?
This targets file is something that will go in your NuGet package, yes.
Which means we don't have the data project's name. So are we setting a default value here? You know what
yes,
I mean, right?
Yes. You're worried about how do we know what project's being built?
Yeah.
And how do we know?
Well, more so, how do we know their naming? Is it Secret Santa, or is it user group, or is it
Correct. And so let's hard code it for now. Ultimately, what I would propose doing, because this is basically blindly assigning to the property. And what I would propose instead is inside of MS Build, you don't have to blindly assign properties like this. So the Devise data project property could have a condition attribute on it. And a common pattern is to say, only assign this property if the current value of the property is, say, empty string, which is what you often will get for unassigned. That way, if somebody sets it up in their project, they're going to override you. But if they don't, you drop in your default. And I would almost propose that this would be one of the areas that a .NET New template could potentially gen up, which is why this could go in via the NuGet package, or we could get clever with a slightly different targets file and do like a directory build props or a directory build.targets and put it at the solution.
I'm not saying that I won't be on another stream, but if we're going to do that kind of stuff, I'll definitely be on another stream.
So you're saying I can guarantee at least one viewer. Excellent.
Yes. Well, I mean, or a participant. Jeez.
Okay, sure. I'll take a participant. I'll take that. So let's leave this here and just verify that we can get it and read it. Okay. Next thing we need to do is we need to actually get this thing referenced in our CS project, because just having it sitting alongside doesn't magically bring it in. So the magical incantation that you want here is typically down at the bottom of this guy. What you'll do is an import. It's either import or imports. I don't remember. You should get IntelliSense for it, but other alligator import. Yay! Space. Auto code for project. No, that's condition. Projects. And then this will be the file path of our targets file, which in this case should just be the name of it because they should be right alongside each other, right? So devise.targets. Cool. Winner, winner, winner.
Winner, winner.
Okay. So that should get it working. A quick and dirty way to validate that you've actually pulled it in, since Visual Studio will bring stuff in, inside of your item group above. Inside of your item group in devise.targets. Put in a blank line after that compiler visible property and do a none include foo.txt.
None dot include.
None space. Good night, Bruce. Have a good one. He's worried that
Bruce.
you are going to cause complete global saturation, which I can think of a few worse things, but sorry, none. Yeah, and so do include equals and then foo.txt and then self-close none. Boom. And then there. So you know your targets file is being properly included because Visual Studio is loading it in as part of the project, and it's now getting that. So
That is a great trick.
Man. Like, we could pull out the MS Build binary logger and debug MS Build. I do that. Between that and the message target is really easy to just go, I just want a quick and dirty way. Did you load this file? Yes or no?
Is it working? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. You were able to load the file. You found it. Great. Okay, so we know it's loading our file. We know it's finding the item group. We know it's finding the property group. Bippity boppity booyah. Okay, so let's go and update our source generator then to try and read that property. So,
all right.
From the cookbook, we want to do it inside of here. So rather than, let's leave your Devise load config as you have it on 32, but right below 32, let's do context.analyzer configuration. Yeah, I assume you've got the cookbook thing open.
Hell yeah, copy and paste is life, bro.
So it will be build underscore property dot, because for reasons it prefixes it with that. Yep. And then out
and
var.
It's gonna pull in as a string, right?
I think so. We'd have to look at. Well, you can do out string.
It's out. It outs the bool in this. No, it doesn't. Never mind.
Zeva, hello. Welcome to the stream. We are building a Roslyn source generator for coolness. I guess is the best word. For new people to the stream, I'm a C# noob. Don't feel bad at all. We all are noobs at some point, and sometimes noobs at different areas.
Sometimes we're noobs at this moment. Like me.
If you watch the stream long enough, you will learn that we don't know anything. I've been doing C# for 11 years. I think 11 years. Thereabouts. Casey, I don't know how long you've been doing it. Probably like 14 decades.
Forever. No, I don't know. Off and on for, it's 2022, 2010. On and off for 12 years, but like only professionally like a couple. So.
See?
I've toyed around with code for a long time.
Okay, so now I have to ask you a question. Is there a reason you wanted to declare your string outside of the try get and not just inline?
Yeah. Stop it. Okay, you're sitting on my lap. All right. Yes. Pair with me here. Anyways, say that again. Sorry.
So the way you declared your string on 33 is perfectly fine, but newer C# lets you do that.
And I don't know all the newer stuff. I miss some of those things.
Well,
oops.
You could type the other line like you did and type lots of characters, or you could put the word string right after the word out. I'm lazy. I like typing the word string right after the word out. And it functionally will be the exact same thing. Because
it doesn't. But it's not scoped. Okay.
No, it's not scoped.
My figuring would be that if I did that, it would end up being scoped if we were to then surround this with like an if statement.
No, and that's one of the weird things when you do inline out parameters, is the scoping of parameters in C# roughly follows curly braces. If you declare a variable, it's scoped everywhere inside its curly braces. So even if you do an if, you can kind of rationally think about it as, well, the if is still inside the same curly braces that open on 26. So
But
scoped at that
kind
same
of gets
level.
broken. But that kind of gets broken by using with curly braces, right? I mean, it's declared outside of the curly braces, which means it's in the upper or the curly braces above it.
But it
But
actually,
it's usable only within those curly braces.
yes, the old using style syntax is a little different in that regard. You are correct. The newer using style syntax follows the curly bracey rule. Again, little asterisk. That's not quite true for scoping, but it's true enough.
Close enough.
Close enough. If you think that way, you'll be close. So let's can we just rebuild the analyzer and re-debug? I kind of just want to catch this thing on 36 and see what the value is after that out parameter, because I just kind of want to verify that we can read the value. After that, then we can make it cool.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Actually, we only need to build the data project, so rebuild.
Woot woot.
Not on that one. This one.
Make it cool. Yes. See, there's someone who appreciates it. You can do the fun C#. Okay. Did we get a data project value? Your head is covering up the immediate window. Hang on. Now your head's out of my way. It's very tiny down there. You're gonna have to read for me. What is the value of the data project path? It's probably not in your autos. You might have to go to the locals window right next door, because autos tries to infer. Oh, it's empty string.
I was doing the old hover, so.
Yeah, so it's empty string
right now.
Empty string is not the right answer. So
this is correct.
Why did we not get it is the next question. What did we not do with the cookbook? I'm learning on Pluralsight right now, taking a beginner C# course, so I will be lurking in the shadows. Well, by all means, and feel free to ask questions too if you have questions on C#. There will be hold on, Casey. I got a detour ends. So
no problem.
I'm going to
everybody who's watching, Kevin is one of the most knowledgeable people about C# that I've ever met.
Oh, I doubt it.
Don't give me that. I know a guy that wrote the book, and you still are able to tell him some things that he doesn't know. So,
speaking of the guy who wrote the book, so the Essential C# book series. So the author Mark Michaelis, and hey, look, there's my name. Is working on getting this content available online. So there is, and hopefully online and updated to support C#9 and C#10 syntax as well. So this is something that is forthcoming. I've hinted at that there was stuff likely in the works, and we have been actively working on trying to do this, but it is, we'll say, a non-trivial amount of work to get the content.
I don't know if you meant to be sharing your side of the screen, but if you did, you're not.
Oh, hey, look, I'm not sharing my side. Thank you. See, this is.
I got you, brother.
Hey.
I'll co-host.
Essential C# book series. Everything I just said. Mark Michaelis is my boss. I guess technically our boss.
Then there's that Kevin guy on there.
Then there's that Kevin guy down at the bottom. We don't count him. But this content hopefully will at some point be online. Like I said, we are actively working on it.
Woohoo!
Bruce, I thought you were going to bed. The only reason we're not using live share is it's kind of that's not what I wanted.
Nice.
Poof. Is because what's not always apparent is Casey is actually bouncing between multiple Visual Studio sessions. Making it slightly less helpful to be able to do it. But yes, under normal situations, pairing with live share is awesome. You can see Casey does have live share installed, like all good developers, because pairing with live share is pretty slick.
The funny thing is I've never actually used it.
What?
I've used it in VS Code. I just haven't used it in Visual Studio.
It's the exact same thing.
C# enough.
You can, so if somebody does a live share in VS Code, you can actually load them interchangeably back and forth. It The
Really?
extension, yeah, the extension doesn't know and doesn't care,
I did not know that.
which is cool because then you don't have to install something different. As long as you have one of them, you're good to go. And it's pretty much the exact same experience. Okay, so we do have the question of why is that thing not being pulled in? So can you... So you can probably kill debugging because I don't think we need to... I think we've proven we did not read our value. We know the devise targets. Hypothetically, can you pull that import statement on 27? Put that at the top.
Okay. Of the entire project file.
Just looked at your GitHub, and my friend is also Blazer guy. So cool. Give that a shot. This is an outside Kevin thinking. I've got a thought in the back of my head, and I'm trying to decide if I'm crazy or if it might be related. 50-50.
50-50. I'll take those odds.
And actually, if you're Zayla, if you're interested in Blazor content, I've got a project I'm working on for doing a gaming table. You can find previous streams on it on YouTube when the YouTube link comes up.
Blazor, C# front end, right? Web front end.
XAML based front end. So I guess it depends a little bit because Blazor is there's client side and server side, so you could go. But yes, picture taking your .NET skills and putting them in webland.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Do I know ASP.NET? Well enough to teach a class on it.
Well enough to be dangerous.
Yes, well enough to be very dangerous with it. So yes-ish. I will throw out a slight caveat in that ASP.NET has a bunch of different flavors. And as soon as we start talking like JavaScript front-end frameworks, that's probably one of the areas where I'm weakest. But
yeah, but nobody likes JavaScript anyways, so.
Fair. But things like ASP.NET Web API or similar, yes, I'm knowledgeable enough to be dangerous. That's what I'm going to study, then CSS JavaScript. That is a very good path of study for you. You will find no end of jobs looking to hire into that skill set. We work for a consulting firm. I don't know how you call it. I think they call it a professional services company or something. It's a consulting firm. We'll be clear. That puts you in the right mindset. And I don't know, what do you say? 95% of what we do is probably ASP.NET related work.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, you know, I wanted to, when I was in college, I wanted to do like WPF stuff all the time, and I wanted to use like build out desktop apps, but that's like not a thing anymore. So like, it's still
a thing, but I think the way I've phrased it in the past is web has slowly started to eat up a lot of the space that used to be domains of, say, mobile and desktop apps. Web has slowly eaten those apart as web's gotten more powerful.
Now half of your desktop apps are really Electron apps, which are really web.
That's true. That's just because web developers I need to build a desktop app, but I can't be bothered to learn WPF.
That is also true. Oh man.
Okay, so we still have the problem though, right? Of
still bad. Yep.
Still bad. So we don't have our property, and the question is why. So let's take a look at this cookbook and figure out what we've done wrong.
Visible property include, So neither of the items in the property group are relevant in the cookbook, I don't think.
Sorry, what?
Are we not? You may not be looking at the same part of this that I am. Neither of these are relevant to our issue.
Correct. None of those, but you'll note that they do pull in, and this is where it also gets a little weird, is they're setting up this CS proj specifically for NuGet packaging, which you'll see the project path pointed at build, visible false, or the package path of the other one, like what we set on yours for analyzers.net CS. Like they're setting this project up to build the generator into a NuGet package, which is fine. That's how most things are going to go.
Where I'm going in the long run. So
yeah, which is great. That's kind of what we're looking for, but there is the question of why isn't this thing here? Now we could go MS build binary logger if we really wanted to, but boy, that feels heavy-handed for something that's probably not that difficult. Sorry, I'm reading through this to make sure I'm not missing something stupidly obvious that we did. Because it's possible. It's very possible. Probable, in fact.
almost certainly must be the case, in fact.
Compiler visible properties include root namespace. So show me, where did you define that? Can you jump back to your source generator where we did context dot? Can you look at, so rather than can you show me what's underneath, or actually even just F12 on generator execution context? So if you put your cursor on the type on 25 and then F12 into that, I'm curious what is buried underneath there. How long did it take you to get your first job in programming? So I ended up, and bear in mind this was almost a decade ago, so that may not count. I actually ended up getting my first job just prior to graduation from college. So
Same here.
I was a senior in college. I had landed an internship with the company, and they, knowing I was a senior, they offered me a job a few months before graduation, basically trying to say, please don't go somewhere else, come work for us instead. So, which is a little different. And I will also say this, I don't know if somebody was fresh starting out, and actually I had a friend ask me about 6 months ago about doing this. I don't recommend that. If people are cost versus return, I don't think going to a 4-year university is a cost-effective way to get a job in programming. These days
especially, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I will say this, a lot of companies, having a 4-year degree will definitely move your resume to the top of the stack versus the bottom. So it can certainly help you get your foot in the door, but the cost of that privilege, I'll say, is really, really high. And a lot of companies have started to wise up to the idea that it's better to not hire based on the degree and hire based upon how well the person knows programming. Not all companies.
Which in and of itself is a difficult proposition, though, too.
Yeah, that is very true. But there are plenty of companies that do that. I have a biochem degree, but I am self-learning. You are actually the third person this week that I have run into that was a biochem major and has gone into programming. What is happening?
The funny thing is before I decided,
2 of them now work for us, by the way.
I wanted to do biochem engineering prior to moving over to computer science. So that's really funny.
I don't. It must be something about the same type of mindset or similar. They don't pay well in biochem.
They don't pay well. Yeah.
I will say programming is remarkable. The salaries that you can achieve for the amount of effort in.
What's also really interesting about it is the range of salaries. Because there are programming jobs that are down at 50, 40, 30K, all the way up to you can be making $500,000 a mil.
Right. Yeah, that is true. I've seen people.
The range is huge.
There is a very big spread.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is that opportunity. Like people who invest in learning and can demonstrate what they've learned,
and find the right opportunities.
It typically will do very well. So yeah. I want to make like 60K starting out.
Oh, no problem.
That actually is not that difficult to do. So, and
No,
I will
that's
say,
totally
not that
reasonable.
difficult to do, depending on where you are, right? Like if you were in Seattle, a 60K starting salary is not. So I'm in Washington State, Western U.S. Just to clarify. Depending on where you are, that can matter. Texas, I don't know a lot about, but I would imagine like bigger cities like Dallas, that would not be too terrible. Remote is definitely an option. I will say this, even though a lot of companies are pushing things remote, it is a little harder for entry level places to be remote, largely because companies still are very terrified of remote workers and making sure that they're working well and doing well. And first time starting out, expect that a good company will want to pair you with a senior person to make sure that you are learning and being trained appropriately. If you find a job that doesn't pair you with somebody, that should potentially be a red flag. Make sure, like, I had I'll call it a career fair that I did at a local university a few weeks ago, and that was what I told a lot of the students is optimize for learning, because this field changes very, very rapidly. There's a running joke that, you know, hey, the JavaScript framework you used last week is now out of date. Like, it's definitely hyperbole, but it is not that far off the truth.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in a company or a job that is not providing learning or training, that should scare you, and you might want to keep looking. Obviously, take the salary if you need the salary, but then keep looking. Best time to look for a job is when you already have one.
True that.
I just started learning C# like last week. I think I have a long way to go before applying, maybe a year. Depends on how much time you're investing in learning and how quick you're moving through the material.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people go through like the 6-month boot camps, and there are some people who do well and come out 5 to 10 hours a day. I think if you set yourself at a year, you're probably going at a reasonable pace.
Definitely.
Because the boot camps, they put you in there for what, like 12-hour days, 10-hour days for
Something like that.
3 to 6 months is what they try to churn you through. So,
yeah, and making sure you're not getting too like stuck on one topic and broaden that so that you're consuming all of what C# is rather than narrowing yourself down into one single point, because then you'll miss out on a lot of stuff.
yeah, that's good advice.
It's good advice in life too.
They help a lot. He's a saint. Jump to, okay, so we were looking at analyze or configure options provider. So cursor on that, type in F12. And that's actually great that you have somebody you can ask questions to. That is...
helps a lot.
Yep. So this is interesting because we then did global options, right?
Let me double check.
I think is where we were at.
Syntax parser, source generator. There we go.
Yeah, so global options.
Global options, yeah.
It's interesting that... I guess that makes sense because you could pull the options for a given tree or the options for a given file, like how they were adding metadata to a given one. That makes sense. So let's check analyzer config options. Interesting that that jumped into a different assembly. And this is literally, so these are all abstract bases. And that's just try get. Okay, so that is not, there is not a lot there worth looking at. Well, doesn't that just bite?
A little bit.
Okay, so sorry, I'm going to go through and do a quick search on the compiler visible property. The interesting part, so I did come across okay, once again, I'm just gonna send this to you. Teams wins. Open that issue up. There's a sample there. Now, admittedly, the person's saying it doesn't work. But his issue is he's not seeing these semicolon separated values. He's only getting one of them. We're getting none of them, so we've got a slightly different problem. But the important part is he does show the layout of how this. Oh, there is one key difference between his and ours. His property group comes before his item group. I have order matters a lot in MS Build.
Order matters.
Let's go flip that order.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
There we go. Because we exposed something, there was nothing there. So let's move that property group up. That's also why typically in your CS projects you always see the property groups above the item groups.
Also don't need that in there twice. Boop.
Oh, do we have it in there doubled over?
I controlled C instead of control X'd. Yeah, let me.
But it is still at the it still is at the top of your CS proj file, correct?
Correct. That is where I left it.
You don't actually need to rebuild your analyzer for this.
I know. I just like doing it.
Okay, we can extra build.
Good thing it doesn't take very long.
Fast compile times are wonderful. And come on.
No dice.
No. Grumble, 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 grumble. Okay. Jump me back to our targets file real quick. I want to check this guy. So here's something else that may be worth doing. Don't multi-line your property setter. Single line it. I don't think we're getting stripped by new lines, but let's just eliminate some potential differences. So, also drop your quotes. Those aren't necessary in here because inside of this, everything's a string.
Okay,
You have to intentionally do stuff to get out of the stringy mode. So that all looks better. Compiler visible property, we've got that. We've got the include. The include points at our project. Show me. Sorry, I'm just checking the spelling to make sure we didn't typo a string. That's the other fun part. You can typo names in MS Build and you will get no warnings. It just will assign the wrong thing and then you're confused.
Yep. Looks right to me.
Okay, let's jump to where we pull it out then, and let's just double check that string there as well. Build property devise underscore data project. Build property. Okay. That all lines up and is great. Oh, I wonder if this is... No, this is expected to...
It worked. I think it was the new lines. Killed my new lines.
Okay, so note to self. Don't add new lines. And actually, if it is the new lines, that may be related to this guy's issues. I was looking at some of the comments on here.
Mm-hmm.
And how MS Build does is it's escaping. And that may have been what's biting you. Okay, but regardless, we now have a way of reading out our properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So that gets most of the way there. Let's do the condition real quick to make sure that goes in cleanly, and I'll show you how to do that. So jump to your targets file.
Yep.
So you're on your property, and I wish there was a clean way to do this, but there's not like refactoring and code reuse in MS Build. It's an XML based language, and language is a stretch. I doubt I don't even think it's Turing complete. So inside of your opening tag, after data project, do a space, and we're going to do a condition attribute, capital C. You should get IntelliSense on it, I would hope.
I probably just started and typed too fast for it.
Possibly. So, and then equals, and then, so the way you reference a property in MS Build is $parens. So do single ticks first, because inside of a string, we're going to do single ticks, which I'll explain in a moment. So single tick, $paren, devise data project. Let me go pull mine again real quick to make sure I get this right and I don't lead you too far astray. Since considering I did that a couple times already.
That's okay.
I don't see it. So do equals equals. No, outside the single tick. And then do single tick, single tick. So basically compare against empty string. The other thing that you'll see people do is you'll see them do an OR condition as well. And in addition to comparing against empty string, they'll compare against asterisk, undefined asterisk. That is older MS Build behavior where it didn't, an undefined variable didn't return an empty string. It returned asterisk undefined, which was weird. But given that we're on newer stuff, I don't believe that is a problem that we need to attempt to address. So,
okay, and so this is forcing it to not overwrite the same variable if they've set it on their side, right?
correct. So so rebuild this project. You don't need to rebuild your source generator, and let's validate that we still get the value through. And then what we'll do is we'll set this property in your CS proj to validate that it overrides.
Let me actually stop this and make sure I got a clean
Oh, yeah.
start. Okay, here we go. Yep.
Okay, so you got the old value. Perfect. So that our condition didn't break anything. Now let's go to your CS proj, and you might want to copy your thingy name. All right, and so we'll go here and then paste, get rid of the condition on this one because you wouldn't expect somebody to add a condition. It's a little unusual to have conditions on that kind of stuff here. And then just put like a 2 on the end of the data, just somewhere where we can see, yeah, something to be different. And then rebuild and validate that we get the new value going through.
Beautiful.
Sweet. Ship it. So I would propose building something up like this. That way you can ship in some defaults and then add in as many properties as you need in here. Obviously you have to duplicate this stuff. I'm sorry that it's ugly and it's basically the same pattern duplicated over, at least because you have to do the name there, the condition, and then the item group below.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But that at least gets you the properties in, and away you go. Like I said, this was where I was going to do something very similar to this for that AutoMocker source generator, so that if it did detect the wrong test framework or somebody just wanted to overwrite it, they could just specify a config. And then you do have an option here, because that is a try get value, you are getting a bool return on that. So if you want to, if you want to deal with the case, it's unlikely that you should ever get an empty string or similar unless somebody very intentionally set the property in their CS proj to empty. So it's like, it should be there. It's going to be pretty hard, especially if you have a targets file that's auto included, for them to not include it. And I won't say impossible, because there's plenty of ways to make MS Build and C# dance the way you want. But dancing isn't always a good thing. So
cool. All right. Well, then I will expand that out too.
Cool. It's 12:30. We should probably sleep before work tomorrow.
Yeah, that's probably a thing.
It probably is a thing.
But this was great. I really appreciate it, Kevin.
Yeah. Like I said,
And
I'm always happy to pair. I
hey,
enjoy it because
hey,
I learned something too.
and I'll be back. Next time. Well, yeah, next time you have an opening in your stream schedule.
Well,
And I'm pretty sure you can probably make those, but whenever you feel like you want to look at some Devise again, I'm
I can
definitely
make some
willing to come back.
openings. Yeah. So
All
let me
right,
know when
cool.
you are ready on the next bit of stuff, and we will attack it and go through. We could look at doing like NuGet packaging stuff next time too to try to clean that process
Yeah,
up.
yeah, definitely. I definitely may get there. I'm gonna probably expand out what you've shown me tonight, and then start working on since the mapping profile's working, probably work on the controller generator next. So
Cool.
yeah,
Sounds good. So I will see. I'm gonna do this. I will say thank you everyone for coming and hanging out. If you liked Casey, you can leave him a shout out. I will once again drop the link to his Devise project in there, and you'll see his GitHub as well. So if you want to go give him a star or whatnot, I'm sure he would appreciate it. So I will say thanks for coming. Happy coding. See everyone next time.
later.